Right, welcome to the final council meeting for the year. I'll just open with karakia, kia tau mai te manamatanga, kia tau mai te rangimaria, kia tau mai te kaha me te aroha mō tēnei kaupapa hui e tai e. Apologies.
You think it was to be up just 12:45 for about an hour for me today.
Yeah, and Councillor Dowell has also indicated an apology for leaving. All right, yeah, could just go. So we'll note those later on in the meeting. Other than that, everybody is present either online or in person. Declaration of interest appears to be none. Public forum, we have one person registered to speak, and that is Mr. Hellier.
Yeah, and I was just wanting the lectern. I was promised the lectern about 2 years ago. Your worship and councillors, forget the government's Three Waters scandal. This council has its own Three Waters scandal. I'm here representing Mr. Stevens of Motueka, who has an unjustified $4,459.61 withdrawn from his bank account on the instructions of the council in a water rates payment dispute. Mr. Stevens has written to the CEO asking who issued that instruction. He hopes he will get a response. The account has been in dispute for some time and the council staff refused to resolve it. Mr. Stevens disputes this amount because he believes that he has not used that quantity of water the charge relates to, given that historically it's been under $400 per term. Could you bring up the first photo? Thank you. As you can see, there is a photo of the boxes relating to the water connection. The one with the white thing on it is the water meter, and the little one down below a bit, that is a hose coupling and a valve. And it seems to me, and Mr. Stevens, that that hose coupling and valve and pipe is connected to the delivery side of the water meter. Second one, please. This is a photo showing the boxes and the clock tower and the grass and the parks close by, the car parks close by. Mr. Stevens wants to know who authorised the tapping into his water main without his permission. Some of the uses this stolen water has been used for is irrigation in and around the clock tower by the contractors in the recent remodelling of King Edward Street High Street intersection. Several members of the public have seen contractors' trucks being washed by this water during the remodelling work. Yesterday, it was noted that after mowing the lawns around the clock tower, the council's contractor washed the nearby cars that had grass clippings on them. Camper vans could also park there after hours and fill their tanks from this connection as well. So what we have here is the tapping into Mr. Stevens' water main without his permission. Taking this water without his permission amounts to theft. Charging for this stolen water without resolving the dispute, we believe, is fraud. Mr. Stevens is considering the options he has open to him on this, but in the meantime, he wants to know who instructed the bank to withdraw the money. If it was a council contractor who tapped into this water main without his permission, and is it a council contractor who is mainly using this water to irrigate the clock tower gardens and lawns? Is this not theft? And is this not fraud? Black's Law Dictionary 5th edition states, any kind of artifice states on interpretations and definitions of fraud. Any kind of artifice employed by one person to deceive another, a generic term embracing all multifarious means which human ingenuity can devise and which are resorted to by one individual to get advantage over another by false suggestions or by which another is cheated. Fraud vitiates every transaction and all contracts. Indeed, the principle is often stated in broad and sweeping language that fraud destroys the validity of everything into which it enters, and that vitiates the most solemn contracts, documents, and judgments. During the recent elections, I raised the council's bullying culture. All those I spoke to agreed that it was an issue that needed addressed. This, I believe, is an indication of the council's bullying culture. It's absolutely shameful.
Mr. Healy,
It hasn't been addressed, and it seems unlikely that it ever will. Mr. Stevens wants this issue investigated by someone with a reasonable approach and an open mind. Thank you. Now,
Thank you, Mr. Hillier. Right, we'll move on with the agenda. The first item that we have is appointment of councillor representatives to a couple of entities. Oh, apologies, minutes. Minutes of the 27th of October 2022 meeting. Someone like to move Councillor Dowler, seconded Councillor Mailing. All those in favour, please say aye. Councillor Greening, do you have a question?
Yes, I couldn't find the copy of the 17th of November minutes.
Well, I'll get to that in a second, so just hold that thought. The 3rd of November, so moved, seconded past 27th of October, 3rd of November. Mover, moved Councillor Mailing, seconded Councillor Maru. All those in favour? Aye. The extraordinary council meeting on the 17th. So has somebody, they included in the agenda? Question?
They're on the agenda, on the website. But
Are they on the agenda?
no.
So we'll just hold them until the next meeting for approval. Thank you, Councillor Greening. Moving on, the first item, so just noting that the presentations from Waimea Water and Nelson NRDA will be after lunch. So the first item on the agenda is appointment of council representatives to two entities, Richmond Unlimited and Accessibility for All. So I have Joe Ellis's name for Richmond Unlimited, looking for somebody who may wish to take up the appointment to A4A. Richard, do you want to make any comments on that role and what we did with it in the last term of council?
The last term of council was Councillor Wensley, and I think they meet 2 or 3 times a year just to look at access for all, for disabled people and the like. And so they provide feedback to my transportation team largely on what could be done and where it could be done. So it's not an onerous task, but it's somebody that's interested in access for all.
Excellent. A volunteer. That's what I like to hear. So we'll put Councillor Dakey in there. So with those two names included in the resolution, is someone prepared to move? moved Councillor Mackenzie, seconded Councillor Walker. All those in favour, please say aye. Against?
Just, there was a link on that site, says you can go and check the overway, because I wouldn't be able to get it.
Okay. Was there a hyperlink in there?
It tells you where riding.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so just someone sort of check the hyperlinks for actual connectiveness. Thank you, Councillor Dowler. Right, the next item is joint committee change to terms of reference, and this is in Elaine Stevenson's name.
Thank you. This is quite straightforward. It's just to add 6 monthly reporting from Infrastructure Holdings, which is a follow-on from the decision to set that up, and removal of Nelson Tasman Tourism and the NRDA, which I think happened some time ago. Questions? Oh, sorry. So this is to just add reporting from the joint Infrastructure Holdings Limited, and to remove NRDA and Nelson Airport Limited from reporting, which happened some time ago, but we're just tidying that up with addition of the Infrastructure Holdings.
Okay, thank you. So pretty straightforward. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just with respect to NRDA, so I think I'm hearing the officer say that this is the practice, but now we're just actually getting our records straight. I think that's what I'm assuming you're saying. But I guess my question really is, we do make a significant financial contribution to NRDA, and so what is their process for ensuring what we get for our investment? So what's the arrangement for them to report?
Elaine.
They're actually reporting to full council later today, so they won't be going to the joint committee.
Oh, so they're going to report to the individual counts. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are you happy to move on the basis of that answer? Seconded, Councillor Butler. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 8.3, change of name for the regulatory committee. Again, Elaine and Leith.
So this first came up at a workshop in August prior to the election, and I think it was further discussed at the 3rd of November council meeting, and we advised that a report would be coming back to this meeting to do this.
Thank you. I'll come to Chair Councillor Hill.
Thank you for the report, and it's good, isn't it, when things sort of carry on through in a fairly timely way, actually. So thank you for that. I'm happy to move the resolution. I think this is an important adjustment. It's rare. I think it's rare for councils to not have environment specifically and overtly included in any of its sort of structure. And this, for me, is just making a correction really to make clear and overt our regional council obligations and responsibilities. And I think this is only going to strengthen our work in this area.
Thank you, Councillor Hill, Councillor Butler, and then Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So this does appear to be fairly benign, but I actually think that it is a slightly risky change, because the coupling of the environment and particularly, as mentioned in 2.2, biodiversity with regulation does put at risk the relationships that we build with our landowners, private landowners who have got biodiversity on their land and who are facing some regulatory control under the new National Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity in the future. We have managed to delay that by establishing our biodiversity strategy. We've delayed it by about 7 years, but I do think it sends a message to our farmers who are very on edge about control, that we are coupling biodiversity with regulation, and that I think that will make our job harder to get alongside them. And our policy up till now has been to walk alongside the farmers and not to have a regulatory hand when things are monitoring is found to actually show up maybe sediment or contamination or poor practice or something like that. So that's the opposite. This is the opposite direction from what we're actually going. And also I think that under 2.5 there is space for the regulatory committee to monitor environmental measurements as they've always done, and to take regulatory action against people who are breaking the rules. Particularly the example is for wetlands, and we have actually taken regulatory action against them, and I think there are some ongoing. So other committees don't have the word environment in them. All the committees deal with the environment. It's spread right across, it's intrinsic. And so I actually don't see the need for this change, and I think that it constitutes a risk to our relationships with some quite delicate relationships with some of our community. So I won't be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Councillor Murray.
Mr. Chair, sorry, Councillor Mackenzie. With respect to Councillor Butler, I'm happy to second the motion and support the motion. As a new councillor, just having the status in terms of our importance of environment in a regulatory setting, I think is absolutely important. And I think it also softens the regulatory outcome. So to get change doesn't necessarily mean prosecution and action. It also means education and mindset. So from the workshop I had and the paper in front of me, I'm happy to second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, through you, Chair. In paragraph 4.5, it talks about the review of the council's delegation register. And then it goes on to say that further consideration will be given to where council's responsibilities regarding environmental delivery, etc., sit. It wasn't clear to me what the intention, is there an impact on staff's work? Is there an impact on, for example, the operations committee? So are we taking some reporting from operations and putting it in here? Will it affect the structure of the council and the roles of staff? So I couldn't get a sense of that from this paper.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie.
Through the chair, there won't be an immediate effect on staff and reporting. That will be considered as part of the council's review of the delegations register, whether things move between different committees, which of course you will all have input into.
If I may, through the chair, so would we not be best to do that work first so we fully understand the consequences of what we might be deciding?
Through the chair, that is an option open to you. What staff are doing are following up on direction given by the previous council and wanting a change to the names of the committees.
Thank you, Councillor Walker next.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I have grave concerns about us changing the name and the scope of work that potentially comes with that name change. And as Councillor Mackenzie's already highlighted, I'm not 100% certain the potential impact this is going to have. And as I wear my hat in my portfolio, the environment to me should come across every committee. And why we're drilling it down under one specifically, I'm uncertain as to why. And again, the impacts going forward. I also have grave concerns about where our farmers sit and the impacts that are already being pushed onto them. And what does this mean? Because we've had a team within Tasman District Council that have worked really hard and been on a journey and formed some very strong relationships, very supportive, very educational. And I'd hate to see that mahi being destroyed over us deciding to put regulatory and environment together just in one cluster with an unknown structure that's going to be used. I won't be voting for it.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. I'm glad you used the word cluster because I was going to use it. But I won't. However, I fear we run the risk of mountains and molehills. My understanding of this was simply to get the word environment into the committee structure because it reflects a significant part of what we do as a council, particularly our regional council function. Councillor Hill suggested that it go in as part of the regulatory. In my view, I never saw it as having any other impact. I certainly didn't anticipate us shifting responsibilities from committee to committee. I completely agree with Celia that the environment runs through everything that we do. I had no intention of and don't support shifting stuff from operations to regulatory. It was very simply my understanding just to get environment. And now it's created this whole massive debate, all of which I thought would take 2 seconds to get through this conversation. I'm absolutely glad that everyone's concerned about the impact of regulation on farmers and landowners, and I hope we all remember that as we go through the TEP and all the things that actually affect them, like the name of the committee, which actually doesn't at all. I have no doubt that from the conversation so far, that council will continue to operate a fact of walking alongside people, working with people. We don't have the resources to send out an army of compliance officers and become, this massive regulatory beast anyway. And that's never been the way we've approached it. So I just don't understand the concern. Like, yes, it's environment in the name of a committee. It used to be the Environment and Planning Committee that included everything to do with environment planning and strategy. So, to be honest, I'm just not sure what the concern is. I completely get the issue of not wanting to restructure the committees. Not quite sure how that came into it, but it was only referenced in the resolution as a to be looked at. And I get the impression that perhaps we can give you the indication now that we don't need to look at it because this is simply, from my perspective, a minor change to the name of a committee, which includes the word environment, and shouldn't have any other implications other than just recognising the environment's a key part of what we do. So unless there's a lot more discussion necessary or people have very strong opinions about this, what I see as rather inconsequential conversation, I'll come back to Councillor Hill for a right of reply.
Mr. Greening's got his hand up.
Councillor Greening and then Councillor Hill.
Just a process question, really. So on the 3rd of November, full council decided on the title, regulatory, and now we're revisiting a council decision. So I'm just wondering whether that's compliant with standing orders.
Elaine.
It is absolutely. We noted at the 3rd of November meeting that we'll be coming back to this, and a resolution can be changed via an officer's report.
My understanding was, just hearing Councillor Mackenzie, was it was a decision about where it sat, not the name of the committee, which is what the council decided on.
Elaine.
the conversation was about changing the name of the regulatory committee to the Environment and Regulatory Committee. This report just highlights the fact that we have regional and territorial council responsibilities, both statutory and to the environment, and it's providing a reporting line, clarity for staff. Yes.
So I'm just asking the Mayor for clarity if this is revisiting a decision already made by council.
So the advice that I've received is even if it is, it can be done based on a report from council staff, which is what we're receiving today. So process wise, I'm pretty happy. Content wise, had better mornings.
Can I to the chair to say something? I think we think of regulatory as parking tickets, etc. What the role of the regulatory arm of the council is for a safe and healthy environment. That means safe housing, it means safe land use, it means environmental outcomes. And actually, the only reason why we have regulations is for a safe and healthy environment. So I think the word environment does reflect our regional responsibilities. And I think that also indicates to the public that the regulations are particularly around a healthy and safe environment. Yeah.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Dowler.
Yeah, I just was actually gutted when the word environment disappeared when the structures were changed. So I'd like to see it reinstated.
Would you like a right of reply, Councillor Hill?
Surprisingly, I would. Through you, Chair. A lot of things these days aren't business as usual. This, however, is. And nothing's going to be changing in terms of how our compliance team are working, how environments approached right across the spectrum of council's work. And certainly what won't be changing is the amount of walking alongside the educational approach that's taken by compliance team, by staff in every area, I believe. So business as usual very much. And you know, one of the things that's a bit absent, I think, in our districts, communities' minds, perhaps, is that we have a regional council function, and I think a lot of people just don't know that, and this goes some way towards acknowledging that, and it's really important that we make the shift today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. I will put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? That resolution is carried. Thank you. The next item is the Motueka Skate Park upgrade funding application. And Lynn, you are reporting on this item.
Tēnā koutou katoa. I will take it that the report has been read. And in summary, we are seeking a resolution from council for staff to put an application to the NZ Community Trust for funding of $60,000 for the Motueka Skate Park upgrade. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Lynn. It's open for questions or moving and seconding. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, through the chair. So firstly, this was a Motueka Community Board led project, and board member Tomset's worked quite hard with the users of the Motueka Skate Park to get a design that's pretty awesome. But in terms of the delay, the costs have escalated a little bit. So I'm happy to move and thank you, Lynn, and the team for the amount of time you've spent both on design and consultation, and now trying to find that last bit of money. So I'm happy to move the resolution that applies for $60,000 for New Zealand Community Trust.
It's been moved. Councillor Murray seconded. Councillor Shellcrest. Are there any further questions or comments in relation to this item? If not, I will put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Next, Regional Sewerage Business Unit. Mike Schrewer. Or no?
Mike is tied up today on Three Waters as it matters. And so we just take the report as read. I've got Nathan here. If there are any specific questions on both the regional sewerage and the regional landfill business units, open for questions. Otherwise, take the reports as read. Thank you.
welcome Nathan. I just want to briefly introduce Nathan and his role for those who are new to the table.
That's good. Nathan Clark is the general manager of both business units, and we have a 50-50 kind of business unit shareholding with the Nelson City Council. Nathan is actually employed by the Nelson City Council, and he works across both councils in delivering both those units. So, welcome, Nathan.
Right, it's open. We'll start with the regional sewerage business unit. Are there any questions, comments, or would someone like to move or second the receipt of the report? Councillor Mailing.
I'm happy to move the report, and I'm pleased to commend Nathan for the work that he's done. I've worked with Nathan for 3 years, 4 years, and I've been on the business unit and I'm the chair for the last 5 years. There's been some real progress, but we still have issues with stormwater infiltration from two of our biggest customers, which is us and Nelson City on occasion. And when you read the report, you can see that. But the work that we're doing in terms of duplicating the pipeline is going to improve this resilience, but there's still some work to do on Beach Road. And the other pleasing thing was I attended with Nathan on the weekend a meeting with the residents of Best Island, who are our closest neighbours and who on occasionally have odour issues, and it's in the report. And I've never seen them happier. And they were actually attended the offices that we've managed to renovate an old house at Best Island. So I'm happy to move the report. We've still got some work to do going forward, and we'll get all this work done, and then the government's going to take it from us. Simple as that. But it's important to get it done, and reuse of wastewater in the future is something that we're working on strongly, but it's a ways to go yet. So thank you for your work, Nathan, and I'm happy to move the report.
Thank you, Councillor Mailing. Councillor Dowler.
Yeah, I'm happy to second the report.
Thank you. Are there any further questions, queries anyone has? Okay, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Next is the regional landfill business unit. Again, same kind of process and procedure. Open for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and welcome, Nathan. So yeah, I'm happy to move the resolutions in relation to this and just commend Nathan for the work and the committee did in the last term, made some real progress around carbon emissions reductions, and scope of work going forward for the landfill is quite clearly explained in the business plan. Also ask councillors to note that there is a price increase for refuge disposal, but that's unfortunately one of the costs of running a landfill and disposing of refuge. There is an increase in the waste minimisation levy, but there is also more money to come back to council, so it becomes part of a month, let's call it before a council merry money go round. So yeah, it's all just part of what the regional landfill business unit does. And yeah, as I say, Nathan's been a real asset to that entity for the amount of work he's got done and progress we've made there, and will continue to make in this term, we hope. So with that, I'm happy to move, Mr. Mayor, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brian. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you through Mr. Mayor. I'm more than happy to second that, and I'd like to, acknowledge what Councillor Bryant's just said, because I too worked alongside Nathan and he's done an incredible lot of work, and there's a lot of good news stories that have come out of what they've succeeded in the last few years. So yeah, looking forward to much more of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. So it's been moved and seconded. Further questions or comments? Councillor Mailing.
In reading the report and having been on that committee some years ago, the one concern that I had was the cost increase, because even if we get more money back, there is an increase to those that are sending refuse to the landfill. And as that price goes up, the risk is more fly tipping. And the other one was I saw we're up to 81,000 tonnes. So that's an increase. So that's probably to do with our construction industry in some ways, because a considerable amount comes to that. And we had a weather event. But does that shorten the life going forward? And do we have to progress the replacement sooner than what was planned?
Nathan, through the chair, the cost of landfilling is partly or largely driven by central government's activities at the present time. So two of our biggest costs are the waste minimisation levy and the ETS levies that we pay. Waste minimisation levy has been going up over the last few years. It goes next year to $60 a tonne. So that's another $10 a tonne from this year. We had a $20 a tonne increase last year. So that we're just passing that on essentially as part of the process. Some of the work we did in the last few years has reduced the ETS levy, so our amount of emissions to the atmosphere have reduced substantially, and that's allowed us to save some money against our budgets. And in the last year's budgets, we went to the board to suggest that we could lower, keep the fee lower, and the board actually chose at the time to maintain the planned increase to try to safeguard against unexpected conditions in the market. We do landfill activities are strongly influenced by economic activity. So the amount of waste we get is strongly influenced by economic activity. About 40% of our waste potentially comes from, development actions. So if the economy turns down quite quickly, we could go into a position where we run at a considerable loss. So the board chose at that time to maintain a slightly higher fee to safeguard against that condition, which was, potentially foreseen. So that's in terms of the 81,000 tonnes a year. Last year we did 81,000 tonnes a year. This year our numbers are tracking below that. We think that is linked to a bit of a downturn in the economic activity, and we are hopeful that our conservative approach is still leaving us in a position where we're neutral in budget.
Thank you, Nathan. Are there any further questions? If not, it's been moved and seconded. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you, Nathan. Next, we have the traffic control devices update. Mike. When you're ready, Mike.
Yeah, traffic control devices update. Updates are the register. I'm happy to take the report as read and answer any questions.
Thank you. Open for questions, comments. Someone willing to move? Councillor Bryant, Deputy Mayor Bryant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to move. I just do have one question. I see an increasing trend for no engine braking signs. Is that something that we're rolling out a little more, or trucks getting noisier? What's the driver behind that?
No, it's resident complaint driven, I guess. But there was a speed change put in at one of those locations, so that would be the driver. That was River Terrace Road at up to 60 km/h. I guess moving forward, if we make more of these speed limit changes, this type of activity, noise is something to be wary of with our future speed limit changes.
And just a further question, we still have to wait to next year to be able to do more of this rather than this process, for a different process rather than this process, don't we, whether the speed management plan?
Yeah, the speed management plan will tackle the district speed limits, but the traffic control devices manual bylaw will remain for traffic control devices such as no parking restrictions and other regulatory traffic control devices. So anything where a fine can be given will go in the bylaw, such as the no engine brake restriction. But it's interesting that our regulatory team won't necessarily do any enforcement on that. And the police are able to do enforcement, but they're not likely to put resources into it in this case.
Right, thank you. So
Okay.
really, well, no, just comment. So it's really down to driver cooperation, isn't it? Yeah.
Kind of like most things, really. I mean, enforcement is very much the exception. The reason that speed limits work is because 90% of people just choose to drive at the speed limit. Right, further questions? Councillor Walker and then Councillor Ellis.
Yeah, thank you through Mr. Mayor. Just a point of clarification. How do we get these items on this particular list? What's the process to get them there? And if it's not seconded, happy to second.
We deal with any concern, complaint raised. So anyone can raise that with the transport team. And we go and look at the issue. And if we agree with the issue, that needs to be resolved. And it's we've undertaken consultation with the immediately affected parties. That'll end up in this report for consideration to be added to the bylaw.
Okay, thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. Councillor Ellis and Councillor Hill.
Hi, thank you for that. In support of most things, I'm just checking with the Hunter Ave decision, and there was that one objection. Have we worked with the person who made the objection for a temporary solution?
No, we did follow up and speak to the person that made the objection and to understand fully what the options might be. In that particular case, there is parking up the property and on the driveway, but the residents of that property don't seem that accommodating to have the person park in that property. And so it is a difficult thing. Obviously, a cul-de-sac is designed to be a place where you can drive and turn around at the road, which is the primary reason why we're recommending it, but it does affect people's parking, obviously.
Thank you. Councillor Hill.
Through you, Chair, thank you. In terms of Tasman Street, Collingwood, thank you for working away with us over a bit of time and appreciate staff's, I think, patience with finding a solution there, a bit of a go around. Just on the report, it's got the initial request was in terms of disabled parking space was for on the opposite side of the street, so outside the Memorial Hall, but actually it's going to go outside the on the spot. Am I correct in that? And the diagram is showing the original where it was going to go outside the Memorial Hall, but actually we're not going to do that. Have I got that right?
I believe the diagram's correct. The original proposal was to be outside on the spot, but there was an objection against that. And all the parties we've been dealing with are happy to have it on the other side of the road, which is outside the hall.
Okay, thank you. I've just misread that. Yeah, it's what I understood was going to happen, and then yeah, and great to have that 120 outside the shop. A lot of people turn up in Collingwood to go on the Onitahua spit tours, which are fantastic, I must say. If you've got any visitors in your neck of the woods this time of year, do send them on over. Patty will be very happy to see them, as will the on-the-spot staff. Thank you.
Thank you for that plug for Golden Bay's tourism industry, Councillor Hill. Well, Golden Bay, Collingwood, all part of the same joyous location. Councillor Butler.
Yeah, just along the same lines. I just, I understand that there's something in train for walkway along Haven Road at Collingwood, staying with Collingwood. So if things are already in train, they won't be on here, will they? So because some work has been done, but apparently it was in the wrong place. and so it's going to be revised.
Yeah, I'm not fully up to speed with that. I do know we've got to start working on that, obviously, but this will only have traffic control devices that need to go into our bylaw.
Okay, so it's not footpaths.
Yeah, the walkway may not necessarily have any traffic control devices associated with it, so it might not come to this.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Butler. Is there anything further, Councillor Dakey?
Yeah, just through the chair. Just with the Queen Street bus stop, I had a quick chat with Mike yesterday around the longevity of the plan and how we move forward if this is a long-term solution or if this is a temporary one, and cost onto that as we maybe look to, with Transport Choices funding, if we receive it, whether we look for a new large terminal location, if this is a suitable short term or if there's too much investment here in the short term.
Mike.
Yeah, we had that discussion yesterday. So the bus stop design shown there is, firstly, it is tight for 2 buses. The reference bus for the new contract is 11.3 metres long. So the space shown outside of council offices will hold 2 buses. But if the second bus needs to depart before the first bus, then they may wish to have a longer length. We did talk to the bus company and they haven't responded. I can only guess that they don't actually know how it's going to operate as yet. But the physical works allow the bus stop to be extended. There's some P60 spaces towards what is now Liquorland that can also be reallocated as bus stop to allow 2 bus stops there in a better location. And the question about the relocating this, the build out and the street and the physical street changes when and if the bus terminal moves on to a new location, the vision is that the plantings will mimic and essentially extend what is on Queen Street, and the road space will be suitable for parallel parking. So the expenditure will last beyond the length of the bus terminal, I guess, is the response there.
Councillor Dakey.
Yeah, through the chair. I guess my concern was if we're going to build it, if we're committing to a parking plan, we're committing to the seating plan and we're committing to the structure that would protect people from the elements.
Mike.
Yeah, I think the design doesn't show any shelter for the pedestrian for the waiting pedestrians on this side, and there's certainly something that could be added if needed.
So it's not contained, it's not there at the moment. I guess on the other side of the street, people kind of utilise the veranda, and on this side, I mentioned they can kind of congregate the council kind of entrance way, which may or may not be ideal. I guess these are some of the challenges. I mean, I think how well those parks are used for people who access council services as well. So that's yet another thing that we're going to, you know, for a lot of people whose mobility is, and this is all these trade-offs. So people who are mobility constrained, they are way easier parks to get into. If you try and park in those parks there, it's actually quite a mission to get in and out. And I quite often observe people facing challenges in and out of there. So we're removing the most accessible car parks from the front of the council building. And again, this is all these trade-offs, trying to provide one service being traded off against another one. And whether this is the right trade-off, I guess it remains to be seen. I see there's 2 P60 parks remaining there, but those parks are pretty well utilised in my experience. So at this stage, from what I understand, it's literally marking it out. It's not creating a lot of infrastructural spending on stuff that can't be undone or changed if it turns out that it's not the best mix of uses. Is that right, Mike?
Yeah, the infrastructure there is the 2 curb build-outs, which with the bus stop layout will provide somewhere for easier for pedestrians to cross, but it also extends the 30 km/h feel of the Queen Street. At the moment, this part of the road has a 30 km/h speed limit, but I don't think it feels like that, and people may not see the signs up at the roundabout. So bringing in, having the build out there with the plantings extends the 30 km/h environment.
And personally, I think that regardless of whether there was bus stops involved or not, is actually a good improvement to the street in terms of crossing safety, delineating the 30k environment. So I don't have an issue with the build out part of the plan. And the bus stop part, I take it from your conversation, both in terms of the ability of 2 buses to get in there and park and operate as a bit of a wait and see how that works. Along with, as Councillor Dakey raised, an issue over a shelter. So if it becomes a long-term option, then that can be considered at a later point, I take it. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you. I just want to ask a further question about the Hunter Avenue situation. So I'm assuming what's driving this is the ability for maybe rubbish trucks or something to get round there. I guess I've got a question mark about timing. So the information that we've got is that we've got a person who has some kind of impairment who's dropping off meals to someone who's terminally ill. They can't park in that person's driveway because the information says that lots of people are coming and going. So, I mean, I'm assuming that the situation has been like this with no parking for quite some time. So perhaps there's a timing issue with when we might implement this. I'm just trying to see whether we can't come to get another solution given the context that we've been given around what's happening at this place.
Yeah, the issue's been with us for quite some time. Megan Bell, who's left us, obviously started the consultation with both the person that wanted the no parking put in and also the person that objected. And she tried to find a resolution for both parties and failed really. Obviously, I picked this up more recently for this current decision here and had a conversation with the person wanting the parking in the cul-de-sac. So I was quite clear on what their needs are. And yeah, like I say, the underlying design of the road is for people to be able to turn around in those cul-de-sacs, but it is an unfortunate situation in this case.
I mean, if I may, through the chair, to be perfectly honest, I would feel more comfortable taking this one off the list.
We've got a mover and seconder for this resolution. We have moved Councillor Ryan. I thought it was seconded by Councillor Walker. So if you want to remove something, you'll have to move an amendment.
Just onto the one outside Liquorland there where the narrowing is. Trucks in and out of Liquorland, how are they going to getting in and out of there? Looks pretty narrow. I know they have some big trucks delivering stock into there.
Yeah, we've spoken to the Liquorland people that had those same concerns, and we showed the tracking curves that it would work. And we also actually put some spray marks on the ground, and they watch their trucks go out. So it will be they will track across pretty close where the pedestrians are waiting, but they're obviously in the mornings and at times when it's not busy. So it is a type thing that's been worked through, and we're all happy with the resolution, or the outcome of the design.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you. I could maybe just inquire firstly whether the mover and the seconder might be happy to move that Hunter Ave off instead of me proposing an amendment, but if
I'll just ask Mike for some clarification firstly. So Did you work with the objector and like to try and resolve the issue?
We did, yes, but we haven't actually, I haven't dug deeper into the requesters' concerns or in fact verified that the rubbish truck is having issues there. That's potentially something it's worth exploring deeper.
So do you think it would be worth looking further into the matter?
Yeah, unfortunately, because Megan Bell was involved, I don't know how deeply that was explored.
Right.
So potentially, yeah.
Yeah, no, with those comments, I'm happy if that one comes out.
So just a general question. So if the second is happy with that, I'll come to you, Councillor Ellis. Just a general question. So one person can just ring up and request this, and we kind of head off down this path, because I imagine this is taken, well, just now it's taken quite a bit of time. I imagine it's taken quite a bit of Megan's time and now your time. So just one person just kind of rings us up and gets like no parking lines all around this cul-de-sac and off we go. Because I'm looking at Crop Place as well, and it's like, the reason is that it makes it difficult, not impossible, but difficult. Now, I would have thought in a cul-de-sac, making it difficult and having people slow down and drive more slowly, arguably a good thing. No parking signs, open cul-de-sac, and all the, like, I get feedback from traffic engineers all the time about, you know, the balance between having parking and not parking, and congestion, and the relationship with safety and speed. And you just mentioned actually out here, you got to make it feel like it's a slower environment, because that's what slows people down as opposed to the speed limit. Then I look at Crop Place, which both provides access to Easby Park and as a cul-de-sac, and I would have thought slow is like the ideal speed, and yet we're proposing yellow lines right around it. So exactly how does this work, and like how many people requested the yellow lines?
You're right. The request often comes from individuals. The background stems back to the road design, and the design standards obviously have a cul-de-sac for a purpose for turning, and it's often left. It's not marked with no parking because it's expected that people don't park in those areas. But the RCA may need to add no parking lines to make that clearer to people where this doesn't happen. So where good behaviour doesn't happen automatically. In the case of Crop Place, the road width there allows for parking on one side of the road and you to drive past. And if someone, and it allows for someone to park on the other side of the road, but not directly opposite the other car. So you can stagger yourself down the road, and that creates the ultimate slow feeling residential street. So that informal parking arrangement is not determined at the engineering stage in design, but left to road users to figure out. And that falls over when there's high parking demand. So we have people parking on all down one side of the road, obviously, and then people come in and park on the other side of the road as well, because there's nowhere else left to park, rather than staggering themselves naturally along a narrow road. And that's where we have to come in and intervene and design how people park.
Okay. Right. Councillor Ellis.
Hi, yeah, I understand the frustration having grown up in areas with cul-de-sacs and troubles with parking. With the Hunter Ave, I have seen in other places where they've used to create that balance partial non-parking sign, so that it does make it easier, not as easy as a full turn, but it still allows some parking for some homes, whether that's an option where we can meet the needs of both parties.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not quite following you there. Obviously, there's quite high parking demand here, and the residents are finding it hard to drive up and down the road at times. Yeah.
Yes, I think the question relates to Hunter Place. Hunter Ave, sorry.
Yeah, sure. I think we need to dig deeper into who can't turn around and what effect are they having. I think
So, so at the moment, I've got the mover and seconder have agreed to withdraw the Hunter Avenue for further work. So the questions that are being asked can be addressed. Are there any further questions in relation to the balance of the item? If not, do you want to reply? No. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you. The next item is the meeting schedule.
I just want to show you the length that Alexia and I have been working for.
Colours.
Elaine.
Take the report as read. I did just want to point out that we haven't yet reached agreement with Nelson City Council about the joint meetings. So that could be likely to change the joint meeting dates, but it's a watch this space.
Okay, so with the knowledge that it is a very congested calendar, someone willing to move Deputy Mayor Bryant and Councillor Butler.
I just have a question or two, if I may, first, Mr. Mayor. So I didn't quite catch what Elaine said at the start there. We're working on a different day for joint meetings. Is that what you alluded to?
We still haven't reached agreement, so I'm not quite sure how that's going to go.
Right. Has anyone, and the other thing, and I'm not sure if this is Elaine and it's a no reflection on it, but has anyone ever given any thought to how we can reduce the number of meetings? Oh, well, at least one person put their hand up.
But I did overridden.
Right. Because it's becoming an insane amount, I have to say, that we had. Well, if you add in all the workshops and everything else. So it just becomes particularly challenging for some of us. So that's something I would like us to practice.
Well, I suspect in the next term of council, with no environment and planning, no long-term planning function, because that'll be done by the Regional Planning Committee, nothing to do with Three Waters, because that'll be done by the Three Waters entity, that the meeting calendar will probably reduce significantly, because our role will be reduced significantly for those who choose to put their hands up at the next election. In the interim, while we're still responsible for everything, and the joys being a unitary authority, working through a TEP, managing the transition to Three Waters, dealing with the challenges of annual planning, 10-year planning, all of the above, alongside the business as usual, it's kind of comes with the territory. So I'm short staff, and I know Robin and the EA team do work hard to try and, which is why we've chosen to try and stick with Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, and try and keep Mondays, Fridays free for people within reason. That's where some of the challenge over agreeing on joint meetings comes, because of Nelson City's approach to meeting only on Thursdays and Fridays. Clearly they have less to get through. So yeah, it kind of is what it is. And I'm sure that we'll continue to try and keep it as usable as possible, but there is a hell of a lot to get done. Are you happy to move? You've got another question?
No.
It was seconded, Councillor Butler. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Maley, no?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, well, bearing in mind that we've got so far to travel, just about the joint committee, whether or not, what are the options? Is there, I mean, yeah, is there, what's the fight? Do you know what I mean? Is it about a particular day, or
it's more to do with the fact that Mayor Smith will prefer meetings only on Thursdays and Fridays.
Right, okay.
Councillor Hill?
No, I'll pass. Thanks. Maybe I'll just, you know, that's, I mean, just based on that comment, I mean, there's 5 days in the week, and I don't think that Mayor Smith gets to dictate both councils' schedules.
It'll be interesting to see how this is reported. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right, machinery resolutions, and then we'll break for morning tea. Councillor Hill.
I'm happy to move the resolution. And it's quite a bit in there really when you think about it, but particularly want to make note of the Pohara Boat Club lease. So that's not been in place since 2019. And it's been a bit of a complex ongoing matter, getting a good lease there. So I'm just really appreciative of where we've landed. It's a good lease, and want to acknowledge the work of people that have gone in, and very good to see the 1.5 million in here, the deed for the funding of the essential freshwater funds. That's going to be very helpful. Just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. So move, Councillor Hill. Is there a seconder? Councillor Mailing. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right, we'll break for morning tea at this point. Come back at 5:02. We'll reconvene and I will hand over to Mike to take us through the next item on the agenda that relates to the quarterly treasury update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in opening this report, I'll take it as read. For a little bit of background, this will be the first Treasury report that our new councillors have seen. We'll be doing a briefing and workshopping session first quarter of next year with our Treasury advisors, and they'll be able to take you through the structure of how we manage debt and investments at council. In terms of the report today, it deals with council's debt, it deals with the cash and investments we have, and it deals with how we manage the risk around our borrowing program. So in terms of risk, there's a refinance risk. With circa $200 million worth of debt, we don't want all that debt falling due on the same day and having to be refinanced. So we have a spread of maturity dates over a period of time to spread the refinancing risk. It deals with the interest rate risk. All of those, if you have been watching the news or have mortgages, would have seen that very significant upward movement in interest rates. So we, just like you can at home, we have some of our borrowing that is on variable rates that goes up and down, and we have some of our borrowing that is effectively fixed. And we manage that within what we call a corridor. So we don't have 100% fixed, we don't have 100% floating. We manage it within a corridor, and that's in the report. The other thing is we manage our finances to make sure that we stay within our banking and our Treasury policy covenants. So they are measures to make sure that we're in a prudent financial situation and that we have sufficient headroom should we have a major event or other unexpected drawdown on our funds. Having said that, there's a couple of matters in the report I need to draw to your attention. One is our current risk rate position. We're temporarily non-compliant with our policy. And the reason for that is some Waimea Community Dam pass-through loans that are due to be drawn $20 million in this month and another approximately $20 million in March next year. So because they are fixed rate, they push our fixed rate cover above the lower limit. The second thing is counterparty risk. That's the risk of one of the people we're doing business with failing. We have a $30 million limit on counterparty risk. We currently have $34 million worth of term deposits with Westpac Bank. Now you might wonder, why is Mike sitting on $34 million worth of cash in the bank? What we do is we pre-fund the next year's repayments on our LGFA debt. So when we talked about not having repricing risk when the debt falls due, we know what debt's falling due, let's say in April next year. And so we pre-fund that. We borrow money early. We might borrow in several tranches to lock in the interest rates in the current environment, and the funds are there. That's advantageous for us in terms of our rating with Standard & Poor's. They like to see an organisation with good liquidity, and having that money pre-borrowed sitting in a bank account gives us good liquidity. Generally speaking, we can get at least the same amount of money in the term deposit as we're paying on the borrowing. So it's either cash neutral or it's slightly cash positive for us. They were the only matters I wanted to draw to councillors' attention. Quite happy to take the report as read and answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Are there any questions, comments? Move a seconder. Councillor Mackenzie, then Councillor Deputy Mayor Bryan.
I'm happy to move the report. I've just got one question in relation to paragraph 3.4, Mike. So we talk about the debt to revenue ratio once we adopt the annual report. So what would be the timing for when we would maybe understand more the impact on our credit rating?
We'll understand a little bit more when we've got an annual plan. So the annual report will go formally through to Standard & Poor's. They'll look at that, but also we'll be looking at that annual plan. And already we are well through this year, and we are seeing some pressure. So as noted earlier in the report, interest rates are higher than what we budgeted. Our interest rate swaps have protected us from some of that, but not all of it. And the level of debt we've got is higher because Standard & Poor's will take the debt, both what we have in our policy, but also the debt that we have passed through to Waimea Community Dam. So as a result of the refunding the dam up to 195 million, we're carrying a bit more debt than what we had originally anticipated, and that will impact on our credit rating potentially.
So just through the chair, so that will happen in the new year then? That they would report back to us, or when will they do their formal assessment?
So Standard & Poor's can revise your credit rating at any time if something major happens, but that typically doesn't happen. We are due to go through a formal review process around September, October next year. And you would have noticed around September, October, you're all advised that our credit rating had gone up, in terms of we moved from a stable, from a negative outlook to a stable outlook. So that's came out of the Standard & Poor's annual review.
Councillor Bryan, Deputy Mayor Bryan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So my question relates to government, environmental, social and government reporting. And you've alluded to there that we're going to look to this and that we get a slightly reduced interest rate. Questions around that. So how much work are to do reporting for that, and how much of a discount are we getting? And is that just on some of those loans that cover those things I've just mentioned, or is it all of our borrowings from the LGFA?
Currently, we have no loans with the LGFA that qualify. A number of councils have specific loans taken, and they're qualifying for those because of the projects are being used. And so this is one area we'll be looking at. Some of the reporting requirements in order to support those loans can be quite onerous. And so we're working through how that works out for us. So we'll be improving our reporting in that area because the LGFA will require it for their core borrowing. The specific loans that you get have quite significant reporting requirements attached. And the LGFA Shareholders Council is working with the LGFA on some wider general loans that take into account the wider range of things we actually do, as opposed to a specific loan to build a new building that's going to be 3-star green or whatever the standard is.
Right, because most of the commercial banks are offering that to farmers now one way or another. So it's good to see the LGFA look into that, and hopefully we can reduce some interest costs, although small, every little bit helps. So thank you.
What is the saving? Does it start with a 0.0 something?
0.05.
Oh, 0.05.
So it makes very little difference to your overall borrowing costs, but optically it's quite important.
It probably costs 0.4 to report it.
That is my concern. I mean, it's not a particularly significant incentive, is it? 0.05.
Through Mr. Mayor, I think the challenge is that the LGFA comes off very low lending rates in the first instance, and also effectively the cost for those loans are met by the rest of the LGFA loans. It's a bit of a zero-sum game.
Yeah, thank you. Other questions or comments anyone has? Thank you, Mike. Very comprehensive, and I think it is. It will be good to get that workshop early in the new year, just to run through the whole process of treasury management, how it works, and what the key components are with the advisors. So that will be a good opportunity. It's been moved and seconded.
Just move Councillor McKenzie.
Move Councillor McKenzie, seconded Councillor Mailing. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Next up, we have the quarterly financial report. Thank you for your brief attendance, James. Apologies for being early, so my bad, not yours, obviously. Mike.
Through Mr. Mayor, just a note for councillors, the quarterly treasury report was to the 30th of November. The October quarterly financial report is to the end of October. So if you're looking at numbers like debt, they won't agree between the two reports. There's a month apart. The purpose of this report is simply to give you a high-level overview of council's financials and how we're tracking against budget for the year. As you would expect, our annual plan did not anticipate the level of inflationary pressures that council is facing this year. And some of that is reflected in the operational other costs that are feeding through in this report. There'll be a level of careful management out to the end of the financial year because we still want to end the year where we can on budget. The year-to-date result is better than what was budgeted. There are a number of drivers in that, one of those being the timing of the forestry harvest and the current log prices, which have fed additional income in. We're looking at separating the forestry reporting out, at least onto its own line in these reports, because it tends to dominate either the income side or the expenditure side of council, because there are millions of dollars involved, so you get a better idea. One of the challenges we have is at the end of October, we had not incorporated the increase in staff wages and salaries. That was backdated to 1 July. That will flow through in the November results. In fact, you will see them as part of the half-yearly report coming through to council. That will give us a challenge between now and the end of the year because it's not likely we'll be able to meet budget on that particular line, and some other savings and funding sources will need to be provided. Other than that, I'm happy to take the report as read and take any questions.
Thank you, Mike. It's open for questions, comments, moving and or seconding. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you. Just one question. I'm happy to move the report. One question. I didn't quite see an explanation for the variance and the depreciation and amortisation line item. So I'm just slightly curious about that. Normally, if there's one thing we can forecast properly, it's that depreciation. But anyway, I just couldn't see an explanation for that one, Mike.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Two things impact that line. One is the capital works program, which is running slightly ahead of target this year. So obviously the assets come on board sooner and they get depreciated sooner. The second thing is revaluations. And so at the time we're doing the annual plan, we don't often have the revaluations, and the last round of revaluations moved asset values up significantly. That wasn't surprising given the market for in terms of the cost of replacement assets. There is some work to do. Depreciation is not our systems for determining depreciation and it being posted in the accounts are not as sophisticated as perhaps they could be. That's one of the improvements we are expecting in the new FMIS when it's put in.
Councillor McKenzie.
Yeah, no, thank you. I guess it probably begs the question as to what the forecast is going to look like but we don't have a forecast in this data. So I think maybe understanding that when your next report would be useful.
The reforecast is due in.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, the reforecast is done February, March. And so it essentially forecasts the year-end position, which will be important for you in considering your annual plan, because it is the opening position for the annual plan, obviously.
Thank you, Mike. So move Councillor Mackenzie. Are there any further questions or comments? If not, is someone prepared to second the resolution? Councillor Dowler. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. That now brings us to the Chief Executive's report. Leonie.
Here, everyone. Look, I will take it as read. I've just sort of highlighted some of the activity that has been happening in the last couple of months. Obviously, there's been several highlights. Obviously, your inauguration was a fantastic event. We've also highlighted in there our Zone 5-6 conference, and I've had just put a few comments in there about some of the takeaways that I had from that. That's very relevant to council. And also just we have resolved the MECA, the collective agreement at this point. We will be going back to the table around February, March to do the wider MECA, which is all around the terms and conditions. So this all we've settled at this stage was the salary movement. I just want to take this opportunity to thank our staff. They've had a big year. As every year is big, but I think this year's been particularly challenging. We've had quite a lot of sickness, people are backfilling, we've lost key staff, and they are continuing under tremendous pressure. And we just keep getting more and more work coming through from central government. And we're just about breaking some teams, the finance teams, been under incredible pressure. 3 rounds to get a management accountant of recruitment. Because we just aren't meeting the market. We have now recruited somebody. We had to rethink about how we grade some of these roles. Yeah, but you can't afford to break a whole team. And I think we've been very close to that this year. So I just want to recognise the staff. They've dug incredibly deep. I'm incredibly proud of them. And I think that we have delivered really well for the council and our communities. So yeah, thank you, Namihi.
Thank you, Leonie. Open for comments or questions, Councillor Butler. Oh, and moving and seconding the receipt of the report if you would like.
Yeah, I'm happy to move. I'm just wondering if the staff are coming back into the office to work, or whether or not people are working from home. What is the sort of balance of that now? Are things changing in that regard, or?
To the chair, yes, it was a bit of a mix. Some teams are fully back in the office, some are doing flexible working. Look, we haven't got a strong requirement for people to be in the office, but people in leadership roles, we certainly want them visible. I think some people are just naturally migrating back because they miss that connectedness and being part of the team. We had some Christmas celebrations and we had a good turnout. People just loved just to be able to, sit down and have a bit of kai and just chat, really. It was good. So yeah, I think we'll see a bit more movement next year.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering about, really. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, and happy to second it. I just want to say thank you as a new councillor for the induction program, because I believe it's quite considerable in terms of what members previously got, but it's been really helpful, and I've got to keep reminding myself that the information you deliver is to make the decisions as you're just the messenger. So thank you to all the team and you for an induction that's made the transition easier.
Kira, thank you.
Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Leonie, for your report. I guess I sit here a little bit concerned about when we look at the health and safety and the trends of the aggressive and abusive behaviour towards the staff. And I'm just wondering, how is this being addressed? Because if you look at the last report and you look at this report, obviously this is heightened. And I mean, I don't sit very comfortably knowing that our staff are being abused. As a councillor, we crop enough abuse. And what supports are in place to work through? I mean, it's one thing to train our staff to de-escalate, and I don't know how many of our staff have had that opportunity. So it's one question. Second question is, what resources are in place to support our staff after such an incident?
Well, we certainly have lowered the bar in terms of what's acceptable. And when I say lowered the bar, lowered what's, meaning we are very, very conscious of the amount of abuse. So our tolerance is lowered. And some really good questions in there. So yes, we've done the training. We've had training around de-escalation. Part of that was around how the community is feeling right now, and people are less tolerant of anything going wrong. And we're not the only ones receiving it. We have met with police, and they're quite aware of it as well. Lockdown procedures, we've had the trainings through all our centres now for that. And if someone does receive abuse, we have EAP services. I send letters. Sometimes I get abusive letters back, but we just put those in the file. But yes, sending letters saying your behaviour is not acceptable. In terms of the abuse that our enforcement officers get, they are receiving some serious abuse. And what we now do is they wear body cameras. Wasn't necessarily supportive of that, but I have become a supporter of that because I think actually we've got those to say actually this is what actually happened, because quite often people don't have a good reflection of what went on. Look, all councils are facing this. Actually, all agencies are facing this. So we lowered our tolerance. I send letters. We put them on a managed customer list, which means that if a staff member goes to a visit, a person on that list, they must go with somebody else. There must be body cameras, and they must retreat really quickly if they think there's a threat. So really difficult one, because we're trying to do a job. Really feel for our service centre ladies and met guys in there. But you know, they are allowed to walk away. They are allowed to hang up the phone. You know, so we support them in that. So, but yes, I share your concern.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Bryant, then Councillor Greening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Leonie, thank you for the report, and just following on your thanks to staff, I also like to thank yourself for the work you've done for the year, and the entire leadership team leading all of those staff that have worked so hard. So it all comes from the top down and the bottom up. It's all a team contribution, and important for the way the organisation ticks. So it is a concern when you hear customer service people who many times are only the messenger being abused. That is really concerning, and unfortunately is a bit of the way society is now. People have seemed much more inclined to have a crack at someone if they get the opportunity. So hopefully that's something that may pass. For some people it will never, but by and large, as there's less frustration in the community, hopefully that gets less again. So a big thank you to all of the team. And then just a question around your report around the representation review. Give some thought to this. Previously, we've done this as a whole of council or as a subcommittee, and I was just wondering if you have any leanings at this stage, which way you're thinking about doing this, because either way, whatever way you do it, it does take quite some time to do it, unfortunately. Will take most of next year.
Through the chair, yeah, we are looking to contact someone who's pretty good in this space, and we'll bring a plan to you and absolutely involve council in those thought processes. So we'll be doing some workshops around that. But yes, it's a big piece of work. We have to do it. So yeah, we'll bring back more in the new year and who that person might be leading that.
Yeah, more meetings. Sure, that was something I forgot to add to the list when I was saying how busy the calendar is. The representation review, which again, as you say, quite a significant bit of work for those involved. Councillor Greening, then Councillor
Hill. Through the chair, I'm just following on from what I heard this morning in public forum, which to me sounded quite concerning. I'm just wondering if the Chief Executive will be taking the initiative to further investigate the issues that were raised by Mr. Hallier on behalf of Mr. Stevens this morning, and will she be reporting back to this council on the outcome of that investigation?
I'll go first, to the Chair. Yes, absolutely. I will be investigating this, as it only came to my knowledge yesterday. I have had staff working through that. I understand, and it is and if there is a staff concern, then I will deal with that. And we will report back to Mr. Hallier and Mr. Stevens.
And will you be reporting back to council on the outcome of this and what the investigation?
If I think there's a concern that needs to come back to council, I would bring that back. But at this stage, nothing is showing that we have some serious concerns here. So I will keep you updated if there were.
Yeah, okay. Well, that would be. Yeah.
So just to be clear, this is not the first time this has been raised. So as the Chief Executive said, there's quite an amount of correspondence that's come in over the last 24, 48 hours in relation to the same issue, and a number of the Motueka Community Board and a number of Motueka councillors are aware, and so those conversations are ongoing. So I'll make the same undertaking as the Chief Executive. So should there be anything untoward that comes out of that, we'll report back to council. Should it be resolved, we will also report the outcome back to council. So it's something that it's not the first time it came up, was in the public forum this morning.
No, but it's been raised. I think it would be useful for it to come back to council, so at least the public can see it has been resolved rather than hearing nothing coming back.
Thank you, Councillor Greening. Councillor
Hill. Thank you for your report, and my appreciation too to you and the leadership team and all of staff for the manner in which you go about your work. It's a huge range of matters and issues that council cover, and I particularly appreciate the way that we've been reported to, related to through this part of the term so far, and through this year for those of us that were here a bit earlier. Yeah, I've got a lot of regard and respect for the way that you and Janine have run the ship, and I hope that you all do get to turn your phones off a bit and have a proper break. Yes, looking at you too, Mrs. Shearer, of course, and Alex. In terms of the report, the piece from our Kaihotu team, we've got a bit of a Kaihotu team. You know, there's been some real shifts and moves, and you know, you can't sort of get movement immediately and quickly often with really important relationships, and you know, our ongoing work and relationship with all of the iwi and Te Ihu, and it's just going to be an increasing aspect of our work in terms of partnership, and before it all moves sideways, of course. But I just see in the comment here about the trialling a new way of engaging. Could you just say a little more, Jenna, if that's okay to ask, just about what that is? So I've been more aware of the policy team, that policy rōpū coming together, and you know, that's sort of more what I'm familiar with at that level, not the chairs, CEOs and other things level.
Sure, through the chair, happy to give a wider explanation on that one. So in terms of key engagement with iwi Māori, there is a big chunk that goes on through the TEP process, and that's ever evolving. So that kind of just carries on and happens. And then there's the rest of the business. And so up until 6 months ago, if anyone needed advice, input, engagement with iwi Māori, it would be a whole lot of scattergun emails that could come out at any time to anyone, which was quite cumbersome and difficult to manage for those receiving them. And we're really fortunate when Renee was here that she dug into that a little bit deeper, and effectively we've set up routine engagement sessions, triage sessions with them we've got some natural clusterings going on. So we meet with Te Atiawa and Rāua together monthly, and we call it informally speed dating, where we cluster up all of the bits and pieces that we've got going on, and we take it to those meetings and triage it in terms of what the direction of next steps are. And so the early feedback on that has been a real win in terms of making things more manageable.
Thanks, Gina.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kinnemont.
Through the chair, thank you, Leonie, for this report. Being a newbie here for 2 or 3 months, we've been doing it. This is a fantastic organisation to work for, and the team need to be congratulated. Excuse my voice. So, if you can pass on to the team anywhere you can possibly say that I personally, I believe a lot of people around here are very, very impressed with their effort, and I hope they have a good holiday and a good break.
Are there any further? So has it been moved and seconded? It has. All right. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Right. The next item is the Mayor's update. So just following along from kind of where we finished, yeah, it has been a challenging 12 months. It's been a challenging 3 years. It's been a challenging 12 months. And just to echo the comments that have been made earlier in terms of appreciation to Leonie stepping up into the acting CE role with Janine's secondment through to DIA. Again, stepped into a challenging environment, done a great job, and with Janine's return in March, look forward to your continuing role in your previous role, along with the balance of the management team. And also, I guess it's like any organisation, the people that make it all tick, the people in the middle. So to the EAs, the ESOs, the work that goes on behind the scenes, whether that's organising things like the Zone 5-6 conference down here, just the meeting schedule. If you look at the meeting calendar today, trying to provide information to everyone who provides the tech support to those of us who are technically challenged. The big red button issue the other day, which had Gabby somewhat vexed until she worked out it was the big red button. So all these things that get done across the organisation every day that enable us all to do our jobs to the best of our abilities. So again, I guess from the council generally, our appreciation to everyone who makes the whole place tick. I guess the only other thing to mention is that I guess it's have a good break because next year is unlikely to be any less challenging than the previous 12 months. So those of you who have been here previously, and no doubt those of you who have been here for the last couple of 3 months, will be starting to understand the amount of stuff that needs to be done, needs to be addressed, the challenges that come with addressing all of that. The item that was mentioned earlier in relation to the community feedback to staff and some of the abusive conversations that happen. And it's not just the council, I mean, it's something across. So you talk to anyone who works in retail and business, and people face the same thing. People are really quick to lose their temper. And that, I guess, exemplifies the stress that our communities have been under and continue to be under. And if we look forward is the wrong word, but looking ahead, with a high inflation environment, challenges around people's personal finances, the challenges that we'll face, then it's likely that stress in the community, particularly through next year, is going to remain at least at the level it is now, and potentially to an even greater degree. So enjoy the summer, the amount of time you get off, and look forward to meeting the challenges with both the council laws and the council staff in the new year. So with that, I'm happy to move that my report be received and open for questions, comments, or a seconder. Councillor McKenzie and then Councillor Butler.
Thank you very much. Happy to second it. And look, I'd like to take this opportunity, I think, to particularly thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that, well, actually, not only you, I'd like to also thank the support staff, but in particular, Robin, In fact, I thought when we did the bus trip to Murchison, you better look out because she played such a great leadership role that she might be putting her hand up to be the mayor in the next term. So such was the capability that she displayed. I think that notwithstanding the difficult economic conditions that might prevail moving into 2023, I actually feel incredibly positive about the role that we've got to play and how we're placed actually to deal with the challenges, but more importantly, the opportunities that will come in front of us next year. And that optimism is driven, I guess, in part by the leadership of yourself, Mr. Mayor, and also the councillors around the table. So I think that, we can take a break, but I think 2023 is going to be an exciting roller coaster.
Excellent way of putting it. Councillor Butler.
Thank you. I'd just like to acknowledge our Nelson Evening Mail reporter, Cherie Savignon, who's actually finishing tomorrow. So thank you, Cherie. Probably not everybody's agreed with everything you've written, and people have agreed at times and disagreed, but that's the way of the media. So I think I can probably say on behalf of councillors, thank you and all the best for the future. And whether or not you are able to tell us who's going to be in your seat, or
Thank you, Councillor Butler. I'd like to reiterate those comments. I think we've been incredibly fortunate to have Cherie in the role for a significant length of time. I'm not sure how long you've been doing this, but it's a while. And having that consistency and understanding of what we do, so that when the reporting is done, that it's generally well understood what the context is and what the challenges are. So best of luck for your new role. And to reiterate the point that was made by Councillor Butler, we've really appreciated the reporting that you provided and the connection that the media provides, if it's doing its job as well as you have done it, through to our community in terms of that information flows there. Thank you very much. Any further comments? Did Celia second? Did you second? Brilliant. Been moved and seconded. All those in... Councillor Greening.
I was just virtually clapping, that's all.
Brilliant. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Right, that brings us rapidly to the point where we need to move into committee. So can I have someone move that we go into committee? Move Councillor Bryant, seconded Councillor Mailing. At this point, we've got a couple of presentations. So first up, we have NRDA, so represented up the front by Fiona and down the back by a number of other people that she may well introduce. So welcome, Fiona. Look forward to seeing your presentation and then an opportunity for anyone to ask any questions that they may have. So over to you.
Sure, and thank you. And also online is Dave Johnson, who's, is this too loud? Is it? Who from the NRDA board. If I could hand to Dave first, please. Thank you.
Oh, kia ora tātou, can you hear me okay?
G'day, Dave. Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, kia ora te rangatira. Tim, e o ko rangatira o te tipu hoki. Tēnei te mihi ki a koutou i te ahi nei. Mō tō tautoko, mō tō awhi i te kaupapa whakahirahira. So thank you, everybody. Very pleased and grateful to have the opportunity to present. I'm representing, as Fiona said, our governance. Meg is an apology, and just like to introduce Fiona and some of our other management team who are in the room today. Thank you for your support to date, and would welcome questions at the end of this presentation. I'll hand over to Fiona now. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Dave, and Fiona, back to you.
Kia ora, thank you, Dave. And I'd like to introduce behind me Mark Maguire, Gareth Power-Gordon and Tracy Nilsson from our leadership team. Mark leads the Regional Business Partners Programme and Investment Programme. Gareth heads the Strategy and Investment, and Tracy leads our visitor sector. Can I just ask, is this repeating back, or is it just what I'm hearing? Mike, is it okay?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
It's fine from our end.
So I think just opening, if it's okay with the councillors, would take the annual report as read. And it was, needless to say, a very challenging, changeable year, which we have met with councillors as we went through the year. The need for response, as well as to keeping going with strategies, the need to support businesses through COVID, and yet the team did deliver a strong programme in close collaboration with council. And I would put this slide up as well, just to show the level of partnership that's involved with that in every project that we're involved with, and that's including leveraging central government funding for those programmes. So if you're comfortable with that, I would move on and take the annual report as read. And just an initial overview, I mean, relatively to other regions across the country, Tasman district's actually performing quite well as a region. You know, spending's up. Some sectors are performing better than others in terms of investment, but hanging over it all, of course, is inflation, it's freight and supply issues, it's workforce challenges, and that continues. And it is varied in terms of the impact between sectors and within sectors, which we talked about before. It's a bit too fast on that one. As we talked about before, but it's generally the pressures that are facing business. You know, we're aware of businesses that have been severely impacted in the last period through the floods, as well as the ongoing impact of COVID, and some closures happening now. And yet in other areas, and I pick out Mark's area in particular, there seems no waning in demand for support for R&D investment. So just to reflect back on the last 5 months of the first 5 months of this year, which is the second year of our 3-year statement of intent, and just looking briefly ahead. I'll just divide it into the 3 core areas who my good colleagues behind me represent, which is the strategy, investment and skills, the business investment and the visitor sector area. So in this area of the strategy, investment skills, which Gareth heads, council will be aware that they endorsed the 10-year regeneration plan a few months ago. That sets a strategic framework, and a key delivery mechanism under that is the investment focused briefing for ministers, which identifies those key investment priorities that would shift the dial for the region. We'll be updating that and keeping that to date every year. That was sent far and wide to every relevant MP, minister and head of government. It was reviewed and resent after the floods to reiterate the investment needs for the region for central government funding. And it was also used for in-person meetings with various departments. We have hosted a number of investment-focused visits and company contacts, and we'll early next year be producing a more extended investment profile. I would also particularly mention the blue economy focus, which I'll mention in a second under that. We do maintain a strong economic development data and insights database. And I would encourage council, as they already do, and also businesses to use that. Importantly, it's not just for strategy and policy, it's for businesses to use. So coupled with things like the regional image library, which we hold, businesses can use that when they're attracting talent or they're doing their own profiling. We are a member of the Regional Skills Leadership Group, which develops the workforce plan. The focus areas for that in its first round were construction and aquaculture and older workers. And this year we're focusing on tourism and forestry and added value products. And I would also mention the Education to Employment Initiative. This is a short-term funded central government programme with long-term focus. It's really a successful pilot. Ange Campbell, who runs that programme, engages with all high schools across Nelson, Tasman, linking industry and schools, holding a major Fantastic Futures event and running a really effective Life Lab career website. So if you know of any kids who are trying to help them with their careers or get into jobs, then that's a good tool to use. I mentioned the blue economy. Moana Nui is the name of the blue economy cluster, which we're developing. We're hopeful of a positive announcement from government for our application for funding to keep that going for the next 2 years and to develop that into a strong cluster. And I've spoken about it before with council when I met you as part of your induction session. You know, we've got over 400 businesses involved with the blue economy in this region. We've got as much in terms of depth and breadth of that as, if not more, than other countries that would claim to have major blue economy clusters, yet we're not on that international map yet. And we're confident in putting this application in, or we can leverage greater growth in that area. In second stream, the investment into business and innovation, which is led by Mark Maguire. A key focus of that is the Regional Business Partners Programme. Generally, it supports about 400 businesses a year for the whole of Te Tauihu. Mark manages that contract. It's central government funded, currently over about 300,000 of R&D investment into businesses this year to date. And the figures are out there in terms of numbers of companies Mark's working with. A smaller programme which we're managing on behalf of Callaghan is the Digital Facilitation Scheme. So on that, we're working with 8 providers across the region, including the Chamber of Commerce, including the Main Street organisations, to deliver capability building for business. And turning to visitor sector regeneration. So clearly a big focus this period has been support and advocacy. And more generally in response to the floods, what we quickly activated was that multi-team group to look at the economic aspect. It meant that whether it was rural assist or the visitor or the chambers, we could have very broad reach into business in response to the floods to assess the impacts, but also to distribute information out to them. But we also made that the focus of our quarterly business newsletter, business survey, which we run. We do that every quarter. We have a different focus each quarter. We focus that on the floods to see where was assistance needed, where it wasn't there. We could respond directly to feedback, but also to look at lessons for future in terms of what might help. So into the visitor sector, what's been great news is the rebound of events and conferences sort of come back thick and fast and with confidence. So we've got a really strong programme of events over the summer. We manage the Regional Events Fund, which is central government funded, but we also directly manage the Nelson City Council events budget. 6 conferences alone during the winter period generated 2 million to the regional economy. So they really made a huge difference when they couldn't run during COVID. And we really had to assess the early days of the floods, the impact on some conferences. It has been difficult seeing many businesses and hospitality accommodation still really struggling. Workforce is a massive problem. And some we're seeing are now having the delayed impacts of the long-term impact of long COVID, I guess, and the floods. So it's really sad to see a few of those closing their doors. But at the same time, we had a industry networking event a few weeks ago, and it was really great to hear about 15 new products and innovations starting up. So there is that happening as well. Great new collaboration, which I think might be in the media today or tomorrow, which is the Better Bus scheme, which many of you will be maybe familiar with. That's a great collaboration between able Tasman operators. We've been working with them to effectively code share, ride share the bus. So instead of 9 buses being on the road last week on one day, there was just 1 required, a really good collaboration. So it's great carbon footprint outcomes, but also good business sense. Another is the continued growth of the zero carbon itinerary, which continues to get national media attention and is great for our businesses for their profile and great for the light footprint, which we're trying to go for with our tourism direction. And the Marahau Pledge last week that joined several of you at the launch for that. And again, that's another strong collaborative initiative. And these ones are actually leading the way for the country and under the spotlight for the country. And in the great outcome, I said at the launch, would be to have them emulated in other parts of the country. We have run a number of continual programme of media pictures and media pieces, but also campaigns. So you might have seen the Play Nelson campaign in winter and spring, or immediately following the floods was the Still Beautiful campaign, but with a strong unashamedly support local focus during this period, which was following COVID and floods. But we also have a strong international reach with that. So this is just a sample of those in terms of the reach we're getting and key in that is partnerships, because we can't do that alone clearly, and they require budget. But you know, just for Plain Nelson alone, it had about 1,200 locals participating in that, and over 20 businesses. So we get good uptake by locals for that. So I'll leave it at that. My colleagues are here for detailed questions on any of the programs you might have, and any questions, or is there anything else you'd like me to go into more detail on? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fiona. So it is open for questions that anyone might has on any of the topics that Fiona's covered, or anything else you might like to ask the NRDA to comment on of interest.
Yep.
Councillor Malin.
Yep. Thank you, Fiona, for your presentation. I was just interested in the government has changed the rules in relation to bringing in people on work visas. And have you seen much of a response from our businesses in that? I know that we've got the RSE scheme, and I've talked to a few of our growers, our bigger growers on the plains, and they're staffed. But I'm just concerned about other businesses. And have you had any response or feedback from the changes?
I might just pass to both Mark and Tracy in terms of the sectors that
now we're into questions. If you would all like to come up to the table, so if any of the questions fall into your area of responsibility, then yeah, you can share the answers amongst yourselves.
Got 3 responses on this. So
if you feel like you want to add anything at any point, Dave, in response to any questions, just stick your hand up, or give me the thumbs up, and I'll come to you.
So I've got a general comment from Gareth, and then a sector specific from Mark and Tracy.
Kia ora, Council. The point I'd raise is we have met with a number of businesses who have raised that both skilled and unskilled migrants or workforce issues are what's coming through. So as I said, they'll talk about the specifics, but from our perspective, it is both RSC, low skilled, backpackers, etc., coming in and filling some of those roles, but we are seeing that tension at the top end as well with skilled migrants.
And probably from a visitor sector point of view, hospitality is the big one that is really struggling. That we're sort of finding the anecdotal stuff from backpackers. A lot of these backpackers have had quite a lot of time to save and haven't come here to immediately work, which is interesting. Yeah, so, and Mark, what about yours?
Yeah, look, just to reiterate some of Gareth's points. It's really, for me, it's more in the high skilled area. So we're seeing lots of challenges with businesses to attract and recruit more high skilled individuals. So that's really the biggest challenge that we see through the R&D portfolio.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, just anecdotally, I had a voucher, where it came from, to go out to dinner at a certain place in Nelson, and I rang and said, have you got any buyers? I said, we're booked tonight, tomorrow night, open normally, but just can't put staff together. Next night, booked full. Following night, don't know if we'll have staff. So literally, they don't know 24 hours ahead where they're actually going to have enough staff to be able to open the doors. So it's a real challenge. So the demand's there when you are open, obviously for businesses with a good reputation, all the rest of it. But the challenge of getting staff, not just in the kind of short to the medium to longer term, but just to know they might be there day in, day out. And partly that's illness, sickness, COVID related, which is obviously still an issue, and part of it's just the actual availability of staff, full stop. So it remains a pretty challenging space. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you. Just 2 questions. They're not related, but I'll get them both out now. So, I mean, we see the headline that 315,000 school leavers are about to join the workforce. So does NRDA have a role to play in terms of those, college students who might be able to help fill those vacancies? Are we actively engaged in that process?
Where we're engaged in that is two areas. One, as I mentioned, is the Education to Employment Programme. That's really to highlight the career opportunities in this region and industries in this region for the kids, catching them at about year 11, so they can think about the careers they're going into. The second area is, but also, as I mentioned, the careers days with industry, and really strong participation from industry in that. Really don't want them to become NEETs, not in education or employment, so trying to catch them before that point. The second area is in involvement with the regional workforce group, and at the meeting last week we had a presentation from the group talking with NEETs, but also how we have specifically links into industry to try and connect in with schools. So trying to look at it from both ways, but you know, there's not enough of them coming off, of course, and obviously some will go off to university and leave the region to go to university, but it's making sure that we don't lose any to not be doing and not being in the workforce. You want to comment? Yeah.
I'll just say another project we're working on is with MSD on the Pick Your Path. So this is a concept of, we know that there are a number of people who could get short-term work in horticultural, viticultural, tourism, but actually demonstrating that between those you can actually have a full-time career changing between those in Nelson, Tasman. And that's a Top of the South initiative that NRDA are backing, which will hopefully be on market in the next couple of weeks to demonstrate those career prospects that are available in the region to people both locally and outside of the region, but more importantly, then allow them to click through to the jobs or the training that is required to undertake those jobs.
Another part I'd mention is that, I mean, that particularly is to makes attractive as well to those backpackers or workers that come in. So if we as a region, unlike other regions, can have this continual stream of work, but it's also for some of our sectors such as tourism, we need to strengthen its profile and its appeal as a career for kids. You know, I mean, Tracy, I'm sure will speak to this, but it's not being seen as a career option, you know, or just a quick job, as opposed to people seeing they might start doing one role, but they might work right the way through to hospitality management. And that is something we've been looking at with NMIT, and a focus for the workforce plan for this year is tourism, to really strengthen the education side of it and make it an attractive proposition. You know, my own son looked at doing tourism, but it didn't have any credits, so why would you bother? You know, and that will change. That's good that's coming through, but it's really needing to build a profile that it is actually a credible career, and has got good job potential.
Thank you, Fiona. Councillor McKenzie.
Yeah, I guess my other question was really around the reports that have been done in central government around the REC scheme, and I guess, you know, do you assess any risks with that for, you know, our Tasman district? Because obviously we have, you know, businesses that are reliant on REC workers. And, you know, I think there was the case in Marlborough where it was less than desirable. So how are we understanding that?
I'm not involved in the reports that government has produced. I would agree with you that we do have, I wouldn't call it an over-reliance, but Tasman will be one of the regions in New Zealand that has the highest reliance on REC workers. And I think what showed is when we did things like Pick Nelson Tasman, which was promoting horticultural roles in Tasman, in the last 2 years, industry had said that that wasn't necessary this year because REC workers and their jobs were being filled in other ways. So that's a positive. But I take your point that any changes to the REC scheme will have a greater than average impact on Tasman than other regions.
Well, I'll come back to you and get some more on that, actually.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of industries at the moment. We kind of think of RSE relating particularly to horticulture, i.e. viticulture and apples, kiwi fruit, but increasingly other industries who are facing shortages, the meat industry, aquaculture industry are either looking to or becoming part of being able to access RSE workers, because the shortage at the moment right around the country, you almost cannot get rid of lambs, not because there's not a necessary demand for lamb, but because the meat works just can't get staff. And same thing, every day they don't know whether they'll have a workforce, not have a workforce, not have a workforce, have a couple of key people missing. That means the whole plant can't open. So that's running through probably a wider range of industries than RSE's traditionally been linked to. Councillor Butler.
You just, I understand that there's a project which is connected to the Golden Bay promotions and gathering of information for a small carbon footprint tourism. And I'm just not sure what that is and what's happening with it. And I think it is connected through NRDA. Is that right?
Yeah, it's probably not so much the carbon, it's about visitors supporting the environment. So prior to COVID, we had particularly internationals coming here saying, now we're feeling kind of bad about that, all that carbon on that plane ride. How can we offset it when we get here? Is it donate, actually plant a tree, catch a predator, those sorts of things? So Golden Bay have got heaps of great stuff happening there. So we've used them as a pilot and they're doing a really big information gathering exercise at the moment, but we want to turn it into something that as a visitor or a local you can participate in. And you can actively participate, you can donate, or you can work on it remotely. And actually Fiona just showed me something very good last night. Noosa have just launched a wonderful website with 6 active things me and you could do if we went over there. Yeah.
Sorry, who's just launched that?
Noosa in Australia.
Oh, in Australia. Oh, I see.
But actually, Taranaki are quite a way ahead and we're sort of following their best practice. Yeah, so we've, Golden Bay Promotions have been acting on our behalf, gathering all the information, and now we're trying to work out how we can get it facing visitors and locals.
Yeah, oh, that's good. So one of the issues is actually transport over the Takaka Hill, and that's just a difficult one that we're trying to progress, but that's quite a key thing. Yeah.
Thanks, Celia.
Yeah, and myself, Councillor Murray, Councillor Walker, we're at the Marahau Pledge launch, I think, which is a similar thing where all the businesses in Maraho have collaborated, and they've added a relatively, in my view, modest charge to each of their bookings, and that goes into a trust, and that trust utilises that money to invest in biodiversity, climate, environment related projects in Marahau. So whatever money is generated, they can ensure remains within that community to offset the potential, well, any negative effects from tourism, but also to enhance the environment. And for a relative, well, it's a very, very modest amount, which I can't remember. It's like $1 something.
$1.44 each way, so $2.88 return.
Yeah. So
all over it.
Tiny amount in relation to the cost of most of the activities that you might undertake, but generates a significant amount of money just because the volume of people that go through. So these sort of initiatives, while there are examples outside this region, there are also some really good examples already being set up and running within the region. So.
Oh, Brendan Allborn is, but they've got a very good website, but we can flick you that information. Yeah, they're very good on their communications and their profiling.
It's been interesting too with that one, how very, very quickly other regions in New Zealand wanted information about it. So this region is being watched and looked at for that. The National Tourism Forum wanted to have a presentation on it. They kindly allowed us to do that. So it's really setting a really good example, and it's building on initiatives that individual businesses already have in place. And the difference is them doing it collectively, which is terrific. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? Sorry, Councillor Hill.
Thank you. Just in terms of generalised knowing, maybe, what's your sense of the tourist season we're about to experience? There'll be some ways, I guess, that you're measuring that it's, maybe accommodation fullness or not, and other things. Quite a few people tripping around now from Golden Bay. We've got quite a lot of people over there actually, and some good peaky days for retailers, then nothing in peaky days. But just wanting to get a sense of what you're thinking may happen.
Yeah, and look, the internationals are definitely coming and probably a little bit quicker than we thought. And there's absolutely some challenges in terms of gaps in delivery, you know, where can you eat on a Monday night? There's not enough accommodation. I had Air New Zealand ring me recently there's a media release coming out today from the 15th of December to January the 9th. They're at 97% capacity. If they have a disrupt and they get a whole lot of people who can't fly away, there's actually nowhere to put them in the region. So there's a real struggle on accommodation. Yeah, look, it's going to be patchy. And I know quite a few tourism operators have been going flat tack, you know, even Golden Bay kayaks and a lot of the Able Tasman ones. And then all of a sudden this week's quite quiet. So again, really hard to plan and staff. People are booking last minute. So it's going to be a real challenge. Motueka Eyesight, I speak to Chryzel and the team there lots. And I speak to Marg and the team at Golden Bay. And you know, lots of French coming through, but a lot of people asking questions. They're not actually booking, walking back out, you know, and sorting themselves out. So yeah, it's going to be a really challenging summer, I think.
And I think that when we've had, you know, maybe last season, I can't remember, but you know, there was a shorter season than people hoped. So when we did get some good sort of numbers and activity, it was quite short.
Yeah,
and I don't know, I guess
they were saying.
Yeah, and
but you can't probably make money and sustain a business in 6 weeks always. Yeah.
No, they're sort of hanging on. They're really hanging on, a lot of them. And I guess we can't tell, you know, if we're going to get a good long season or not till it happens, I suppose. I suppose it's a bit of a guessing game.
Yeah, totally. And we always see accommodation quite full to mid-January, and that's the situation now. I was also informed today Bay Dreams is going to be a bit challenging because apparently there's just no accommodation for them and they're not opening the camping this year. You know, and so somebody said, you know, get the message out to tell people to plan. I'm like, well, they should have booked their accommodation for Bay Dreams now. It's January the 5th. Yeah. But that's youth for you, you know.
It will be very, very good to have that. It'll be very good to have the state highway open.
Yeah.
When the state highway opens on the 18th, I think a lot of people are absolutely banking on that date as a hard date.
And I just hope that, you know, there isn't that message out there, or just in people's minds, even if it's not that sort of conscious about, you know, a bit of a disaster area down there, top of the south of Leyte. Where should we go? I know you don't know the answer to that, but
yeah, we focused on that. You know, as soon as it was within decency to do so, we were promoting the place is still beautiful. The Inter-Island has been very supportive in terms of its pre-booking information about the area. We had the profile in the airport, so we're very, very conscious. The minute the floods happened, you know, there's the absolute support for the businesses and support for the houses, but there's also, as we see when disasters happen and they're very focused in other areas, it's really important to get out of people's minds that the whole region is as you say, a no-go area, and to get that positive imagery back. So we have focused on that, and we've got another sort of campaign about to come out in terms of all the things there are to do in the region. So we're really needing to keep that positive messaging out, to partner with the top of the south partners as well, not just work in isolation, and particularly internationally we need to do that. We're getting good profile with Tourism New Zealand in terms of key sites to promote internationally. So but yes, it's a key issue when you have something like that happen. You need to be ready to take the visitors, but you need to get the positive messaging out as soon as you can, because people are booking ahead or will cancel ahead.
Thank you. A couple more questions. So Councillor Walker and then Councillor Greening.
Yeah, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. A big thank you for the messaging that you are putting out for our community, because I know that I had it thrown in my face the minute that road was closed, and it was, you know, and the work around wasn't as successful as what we'd all hoped for, and the damage to that road. But I know that you went forth and communicated that, and I believe that you'll continue to do that as our season gets steadily busier and the road reopens. Long may it stay open.
Thank you. Councillor Greening.
Oh yeah, two questions really. One on the RSE worker front. and one on new businesses in the region. On the RSE front, are we looking to attract obviously low-skilled workers from outside the region? And how are we doing that? And what do we see as the barriers that we can kind of focus on to attract those workers? Because there's still a reasonable unemployed in New Zealand, and they may not necessarily all be in Nelson.
I think the answer would be we're trying to attract all workers into the region, as I'm sure you, in terms of lower skilled or different types of work, right across the board. So in terms of promoting ourselves as a place to live, work, visit and stay, that's a continual broad campaign. Initiatives such as the one that Gareth mentioned, but also, you know, as the conversation was just discussing, you know, we're like every other region. Every region's that's short of these workers, and whether it's in the aquaculture companies or the horticulture companies. So, you know, we need to promote ourselves as the place that people want to come and work. We do have natural advantages in terms of where they want to be, and get ourselves on that radar. But we, of course, are competing with every other region in doing that. But it's talent attraction, but definitely all levels of skill and right across the board. You know, there's an immigration regional skill shortage list, and it's, you know, construction of all types, all sectors for this region. I think the other point in terms of the skills is the hospital redevelopment, and some of our main redevelopments will really highlight that shortage. We're meeting with one of the companies who's going to be bidding for the rebuild last week, and they're saying, you know, what are the key issues we need to consider? We said, well, skills and housing will come up immediately, and you know, obviously that procurement process is not until mid-late next year in planned, but they're looking at that now, and they're keen to engage with communities now in terms of what those issues would be, and we did reiterate to speak to both councils about that. So I think it's working from many different fronts, and where we can work with, whether it's government organisations or if it's the condition of the workers that we need to support, but definitely putting ourselves out there in terms of talent attraction.
Yeah.
Thank you. And second question.
Yeah. So just to close off on the first one. It would be good that we gather information, or at least do some research on trying to identify what barriers there are for attracting low skilled into the region if there is a demand for RSE workers. My second question is just in relation to new businesses. So I'm quite interested to see what the intelligence is on what we're seeing coming into the region, how much is coming into the region, what are those types of businesses, and what are the barriers? For example, is it capital? Is that something we can work on?
Thank you, Councillor. When you said that at the start, that's why I was on my phone trying to find the numbers for you. So I can tell you that the business unit numbers in Nelson, Tasman as a collective is just shy of 13,500, which is actually negative for the year of negative 0.09. So statistically, it's been the same. To your second point, where those growths in businesses over the last 10 years have been is in rental and real estate, financial and insurance services, professional, scientific and technical, so science and technology, construction, and then healthcare have been where the biggest growths have been in this region in the last 10 years. Is that the type of information you were after?
Can I add to that?
Just a general, yeah, because I don't need necessarily 10 years, but maybe the last 3. But I'm just trying to get a feel for what you're seeing coming into the region, because clearly you're trying to target and attract talent, and obviously businesses to attract that talent as well. And I'm trying to get a sense of what you've been targeting. Have you been successful with it? What are we seeing coming?
Can I add to that? I'm actually going to pass to Mark, because as well as the retail and so on businesses, it's actually the growth in some of our key ones.
Yeah, just for some context, we would see approximately 50 to 60 pre-revenue startup companies per year in that research and development space. Of those, the general types of support sit within connectivity, so they may want some sort of independent advice or resources or connections into wider industry groups or connections into funding. Capital is very much a hot topic for early stage businesses. Sometimes that's into angel investment networks. Sometimes that's into venture capital funds. I would deal with somewhere in the region of about 15 different VC funds across the region, across the country. And of course, other forms of government funding is also very topical. So yeah, it's a real diverse mix of what we see and what the business need is based on the age and the stage and also the capabilities of where their starting point is. So general connectivity, funding, capital, always topical for early stage businesses. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Greening, for those questions. Thank you for the answers. I think at this point we will conclude. Well, I think it is going to be a challenging 12 months ahead, and some of the industries, so it's really good to see tourism and hospitality pick up because it's been a very challenging 3 years. However, the businesses that have sustained us as a region through the last 2 or 3 years, particularly primary industries and residential construction, are facing some very significant challenges looking forward in the next 12 months. So obviously, things aren't all sweetness and light in tourism and hospitality because there remain significant challenges, and the ups and downs are part of that. But as a region, things like the hospital rebuild and how that dovetails into a potential slowdown in residential construction, and how we ensure that the people who are working in that sector can transfer across, particularly if the winning bidder is a business that isn't necessarily based in this region, how we ensure that our region's tradesmen, tradies, support industries and businesses are connected into that. So yeah, a lot of work to be done in this space, and the role for the NRDA is only going to, I think, remain as significant as it has been over the last 3 years. So really like to thank Fiona and the team for coming in today, for doing the presentation, for the work that you've been doing and will continue to do. And yeah, wish you the best of luck for the summer break, such as it will be.
Thank you, Kira. Thanks very much. And any time any more information you'd like on any of the projects, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're always open door. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Fiona. Right. Who's next? That's Santa Claus. Oh, that's Mike. Right, so the next presentation is from Waimea Water Limited. So again, I will hand over if you'd like to make some introductions. David, I presume you'll open proceedings, maybe introduce again for a number of councillors. It might be the first opportunity they've had to hear from Waimea Water Limited. And then we'll move into your presentation, and then an opportunity for councillors to ask questions that may arise from that. So over to you.
Thanks, Mayor Tim, and equally hello to those of you that I have not met before, but it's great to be here. I'm David Wright, I'm the Chair of Waimea Water, and what we're going to do today is, Mike, as in the past, will run through a presentation which will bring us right up to date with where we are now, and I'm just going to make by way of a few introductory comments, the first of which is largely good news. We are getting towards the end and looking forward to the completion of the structure and the beginning of the filling of the dam. So I was just sitting here, Mayor Tim, sort of thinking, well, in a year's time, I hope that we'll be walking in here to say we've got an operational dam, which after the sort of 15, if not 20 years since the idea first came up, will be really, really neat to see. So Mike will talk a bit about it, but looking to having completion of the structure, close and ability to fill in March, and still on track for practical completion, filling complete by the end of September. The budget remains at the 195 million. We will talk more about that later, but it continues, true to say, it continues to be stressed, particularly given some of the cost challenges we've got around mechanical and engineering. There are some residual risks still sitting there. Mike will touch on those through to and including the contractor dispute, which everyone is aware we are in. So just sort of by way of final comments, I'd just like to acknowledge the guidance and support that I get from my fellow board directors. Equally, an acknowledgement to Mike and the team, the commitment of the CE to delivering this project. It certainly is, as we've said before, one challenging project being delivered in challenging times. And finally, and certainly not least, to thank you as the shareholders for the support and confidence that you've got in your board. So with those introductory comments, I'll hand across to Mike.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Robin, are you driving?
Yes.
Thank you, Council, for having us again today. As David said, hopefully next time we meet, we'll be about to, if not closing the dam and starting to build the reservoir. So by way of overview, we are now about 84% complete. The design is now completed for the geological conditions that we've encountered, and our attention is now turned towards operations readiness. I'm pleased to report, as we have done at every other council meeting, that there have been no serious harm injuries to date on the project, and we continue to be in full compliance with the resource consent. We have been working with the contractor on mitigating some of the project delays, and we believe we can bring forward the practical completion to September next year. We do face further cost pressures over the next year, mainly with the mechanical, electrical and diversion works in this rather super hot, high inflationary economy. And I guess the final issue there, health warning, is that the contractor has initiated dispute escalation, which is a risk to the project. You can see here a photo. This is looking at the completed dam face and the parapet wall. So a few photos just to show you where we're at. As I said, 84% complete. This is the upstream face, and you can see the completed pipework and screens with the spillway in the background. Same photo from the other side, the downstream face and spillway pretty much completed now. So the dam itself, the embankment, is completed. We completed the embankment in December, the concrete face in May, and the parapet wall was finished in August, and we're just concluding the backfilling now. So you can see the photo of the dam face on the left there. On the right, there's a cross-sectional photo of the fill that's going in behind the concrete face and parapet wall. And this shows where we spent a good part of the money. You can see on the left the expensive highly engineered flow preventing material, which required us to import 650 tonnes of sand per week for a year, which is has a role of slowing down any leakage through the dam in the event of an earthquake. And on the right, you can see the expensive drainage material, which is used to construct the drainage chimney and drainage blanket. As I said, we finished the dam face equipment. You can see the screens and the pipework here on in the two photos. These screens have now been installed and commissioned and operational, up and down the dam face for maintenance. The spillway is now largely complete. We finished the chute in August. The bridge deck's now being poured. This is looking down the spillway on the right. And two more photos of the spillway. You can see on the photo on the right here the OG weir that was completed in October. For a bit of perspective and scale, you can see two guys standing on that photo up there, which gives you an idea of how wide it is. It's 40 metres wide at the top of the spillway, and the OG weir is 5 metres wide. So what's in front of us now is pretty much above and below the spillway. So we're just finishing up the cut-off wall now beneath the spillway, which is the photo on the left. That's now been poured this week. On the left, we'll have that finished in January 23, and then we're working on the approach apron above the spillway, upstream of the spillway, and that'll be finished in March. And you can see the photo on the right. They're just preparing to start the grouting. The drilling and the grouting. The big milestone since we last talked is we have commenced the closure sequence and the river diversion works. So on the 18th of October, the contractor put down the left-hand stop log and closed the left-hand barrel of the two barrels. So you can see the photo on the left-hand side there. The river continues to flow to the right-hand side, and the true right, which is on the left there. And the true left culvert is now closed and being used for construction. So the CAD drawing in the middle shows what this means. We've got water flowing down one culvert and the pipework being put into the other culvert. And the photo on the right there shows the guys putting in the pipework and now forming up the reinforcing for the concrete plug. So it's gone well so far, the closure. The concrete plug's been poured, and we expect to put the temporary pipework in early next year, which means that we should be closing the reservoir up and start filling the reservoir from mid-February next year, so imminently, but all subject to weather, of course. The health warning is mechanical and electrical costs continue to be our Achilles heel. We are seeing cost pressures in this high inflationary environment. Just a reminder that when we started the project, we didn't have a mechanical and electrical design. It wasn't priced or contracted. So we're basically paying costs as we go. And what we're seeing is that these costs are seem to go up almost every day. We are managing those as well as we can. But we are running up against the budget with these costs. Those costs are exacerbated by the fact that the works has taken a lot longer than the contractor had contemplated. The photo on the left shows some of the GRP pipe arriving early in the year. I put that in there just to show you the scale of it. It looked pretty small on that previous photo, the dam face. That shows you the size of it there on the truck. And on the right, you can see our butterfly valve. I think last time I was here with the council, that same valve was photographed in Germany, and we were worried about getting that valve here in time. We ended up air freighting that 11-ton valve, and it arrived just recently in the country, so just in time. Program. So you'll recognise this chart. Look, we have lost time this year through a number of reasons. A couple of those reasons was we've had sort of falling productivity with a challenge of finding people. I don't think that's unusual to our project. The whole country seems to be struggling to find people. We've lost workforce with COVID-19. I think we've lost over 7,000 hours with people being at home with COVID. And we are seeing prolongation of the river diversion and mechanical works, which is delaying the project. As I said, we are mitigating those delays, and we now expect to close in February next year and then complete the project in September, which is earlier than I previously told you of 2024. Costs forecast, we still maintain the June forecast of $195 million. The health warning, as I said, is under pressure, and we are up against it with this mechanical and electrical price escalation, which is an unfixed price and essentially a cost reimbursement basis. This chart you would have seen in the annual report essentially describes our cost increase. I won't go through it other than to say that of the $90 million cost increase since we started, roughly half it's associated with the geology, a quarter of it's the mechanical and electrical, and a quarter of it's under budgeted or unknown costs, such as COVID costs, delays, engineering costs. So we are 84% complete, 9 months and $33 million to go, as you can see on this chart here. So the time and the cost are lining up at around about 84%. Cost forecast, as I said, the S curve on the right shows us at $161 million spent to date out of the 194 million, 194.6 million. And we're pretty much on track with our cost forecast. The green line is tracking the black line, the gold line. The chart on the right shows our funding source. So you can see the TDC contribution to the project, which is 51%, being a combination of equity in the green and the loans as well, and the irrigator share coming through financing capacity and equity as well. Big shout outs to the two shareholders who recently concluded new funding agreements to fund the $194 million. Final slide. The project does have residual risk, which I need to bring to your attention. We have priced the project and what we can see and know. Some of the risks that are out there that we haven't priced include the weather. These photos are from the August flood. With a full culvert running at 180 cubics, we still managed to fill the reservoir 15 metres up. We had 30 odd million cubic metres of water go through the culvert in 4 days. So we could have filled the reservoir 2.5 times in 4 days during those floods. And once again, so it's a great spot for a dam, right? I think I owe it to the contractor again to, as a shout out and kudos to their performance, because they managed that flood really, really well. And all our preparation plans went very well. There could be further COVID-19 impacts, and we are starting to see people back off the job again with this next wave coming through. And I guess finally, we do face the risk of contractor claims and dispute process. We've been through adjudication, and that didn't cost us any more money. And the contractor has now initiated arbitration against us, which will take the next 2 years to go through. And there is a risk that there could be further cost out of the back of that arbitration. And that's all I had. So if you'd like more information, our annual report and our quarterly report with you and online. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike, for that comprehensive overview. David,
sorry, me.
Anything to add?
I was very remiss in not introducing Doug Hattersley, one of the directors, particularly to those of you that haven't met either of us. So this is one of the Waimea Water directors.
Thanks, David. Welcome, Doug. So open for questions that anyone has on anything Mike has covered. Mike.
Thanks very much, Mike, for that overview. Showing my naivety, what is an OG spillway?
The OG, councillor, it's a weir at the top of the spillway, which sets the level of the reservoir, and it's formed with very in curves for the hydraulic flow over it. So it optimises hydraulic flow and keeps it in a laminar flow, so you don't get turbulence as the water goes over it.
I've got a second question. When we did the bus trip to the dam, we were talking to someone who's saying about the fish coming up the river, and they come up to the dam, and then there's an issue taking the fish from there over the dam, and there was still an issue. Is that an issue, or is that just it'll get sorted out eventually?
Councillor, we're working on a trap and transfer program, so we'll be trap and transferring eels and fish both ways. Correct.
Further questions? Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you very much. It's not a question really, although I am thinking about the swimming hole up there over the summer and whether there'll be any impacts. But no, look, I actually think it's incredibly exciting where we're at. I can't believe that we're now starting to change the conversation to transitioning and operationalising it. And I guess really, I just want to give my thanks to the board and to you, Mike, because, you know, it's been an incredibly intense period, I would imagine, for all of you. And so just can't wait. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions?
Thank you, Mayor Tim. Thank you, Mike, David. So yes, thank you for the work you've done getting us this far. Yeah, I think we're all, and I guess you guys are feeling much happier that we're looking towards the better end now. Firstly, and I think previously you've told us about the challenge of employment of employees and the contractor perhaps not performing as they may have done. Has that issue been resolved, and are we seeing better now that we're getting near the completion end, better cooperation from the contractors and workforce generally?
Oh, it's a challenging question. Thanks, Councillor. Look, I don't think it's any state secret that we've had difficulties with the contractor. It's been a challenging project. I think, with the end in sight now, it feels that we are now very focused on getting to the end as fast as we can. So I think there's now good collaboration in getting to that point.
Thank you. And just in relation to the matter of arbitration, is there any way that we can shorten that process, or is that 2 years seems a long time to spend on that? Yeah.
I think it's true to say that both parties would wish to avoid a protracted litigation. So there no doubt will come a point in time when there will be the appropriate discussion, but we are certainly wishing to represent the shareholders' best interests, and whether that can avoid going to a costly and drawn out litigation arbitration remains to be determined.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker and Councillor Butler.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess this is you, the questions for Mike. So on your opening slide, you've got 195 mil excluding unquantifiable risks. You've also shared that there's an 84% completion. So is the completion in the structural build, or is the completion when the dam's ready to turn a valve and voila, we have a dam?
The latter.
Okay, cool.
Voila.
Alrighty.
Turning the valves on. Yep.
To turn the valves on. Sweet. A bit like what Councillor Bryant shared, I sit very uncomfortable with this risk factor of could be 2 years if it goes to arbitration or whatever that process looks like. So does that mean we sit with a risk factor of the costs escalating by the day until that process is done? And then I have a third question, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry. Yeah, so the cost of construction will escalate because, I mean, it's built. The risk is the arbitrator ruling in not in our favour, which would be contrary to the decisions of firstly the two engineers and contrary to the decision of the adjudicator, because we went through adjudication last year, you recall. Yeah, so there is that risk there, and we won't know that until we finish arbitration if we get there.
I guess my comment, well, thank you for the explanation, but I guess my comment was based on there's legal fees, and we're going to be paying those every time we look into it. So to me, that's a daily cost that keeps reoccurring, which increases our risk factor. But my last question, if I may, is in the very early part of your presentation, you talked about grouting. Can you explain what that is and how that's done, please?
The grout curtain. So the grout curtain seals the substrata, so it stops leakage underneath the dam. So the least path greatest head is obviously right at the edge of the front edge of the dam. So we drill and pump grout into the substrata about 44 metres down under the ground, and we seal up the substrata to avoid the leaks. So we had you recall from last year, we had a budget of 5,000 metres of drilling. I think we're now looking at about 17,000 metres of drilling. So we've done a lot more grouting than we ever expected to do to seal up that substrata.
Thank you.
One last
Yeah.
thing. Got there. Thanks. So Brian. So when you drill down, you're drilling down to bedrock.
No, it's
So how far are you drilling down then?
it's through rock. So
It's through the rock.
yeah. So I mean, all rock has some sort of permeability to it, and so the job of the grout curtains to reduce the permeability. And obviously, the deeper you go down, the longer the path.
Yeah.
So there's less flow. So the grout curtains deepest at the deepest part of the reservoir, and it's through rock sealing up the permeability, reducing the permeability of the rock.
Oh yeah, because when we did our visit, I was just a bit concerned about the quality of the rock, and that I could stand on one point and yet 2 feet to the side of me, you couldn't really call that rock. So I just wondered what the impact was when we're drilling down into there and you're bunging it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Shellcrest and then Councillor Greening.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Hey, just asking where the special sand comes from that we've had to give in.
This council of the sand came from a number of sources. We're taking about 500 tonnes a week from local production, Appleby, and that was half the regional production. So we took half the region's sand for a year, and then we're importing from Renwick and from the West Coast.
Cool.
Thank you. Councillor Butler, sorry, Councillor Green and Councillor Butler did have her hand up and I admitted to go to her first, so I will come to you after that, Councillor Butler.
Yeah, it is amazing to be where we are now after, last 3 years. So I think we're in a great position, but I'm just thinking now about the transition to operations and just maintaining the dam, and whether as regards staffing, will you be changing the guard, as it were? Will there be a different skill set required, and will people who are working there at the moment stay on? Is there a risk that people will say, oh well, it's nearly finished now, so we'll leave? I'm just thinking, do you envisage any problems with that? And so, because I think some of the staff have come from away, haven't they? And so now you'd be looking at having staff who are going to be living in the area. And so I'm just wondering if you're doing any kind of forward planning about that, or do you see any problems?
The answer is probably yes to all of the above, and we're certainly planning now in terms of what our resources are. And we think there's really 3 distinct phases. There's the one we're in now, which is the completion of the construction. There's the period through the defects liability phase as we address whatever might emerge, and there is then the ongoing operation of the dam, and there will need to be a transition as 1 and 2 phase crosses over 2 and 3. So yes, we've got a plan in front of us, and we're in terms of what those staffing requirements are.
Thank you, Councillor Greening.
Thanks. Just following on actually from an earlier line of questioning, and I also have another question as well, so I suppose it's 2 questions. In the past, when we've spoken about grouting, you've explained it in terms of drilling down to bedrock. So I didn't hear that mentioned. I just heard 44 metres. So have we drilled down to bedrock, given that I assume was the best practice, or have we not drilled down to bedrock and stopped at 44 metres?
Yeah, councillor, through bedrock. So the dam is built on rock. We've cleared the overburden. We've got down to sufficiently strong bedrock to found the dam, and then we now drill through the rock down to up to 44 metres deep to reduce the permeability of that rock.
Right. So we have we have we've got grout holes that are drilled down to bedrock and through bedrock, is what you're saying.
Through the rock, that's right.
Through bedrock.
Yeah, through founding rock.
Right. Okay. Cool. Just fantastic. My other question just relates, and I've mentioned this earlier, so I'm hoping that you've already been briefed about it. And it looks like you've kind of addressed my concern was around the ongoing risk, and you've acknowledged that there is an ongoing risk and that the current 195 million is under probably significant pressure. And you've highlighted the fact that you've taken reasonable estimate of known risks and trends. So are those estimates of reasonable known risks and trends included now in the 195 million, or are they above the 195 million? Because last time there was no contingency in the 195 million.
Yeah, so councillor, I mean, as I said earlier, we price our or at least we work up our cost forecast and what we can see and what we know. There is no contingency for the unknown risks or stuff that we aren't expecting. So if we do experience further mechanical costs, then that would increase the number. Equally, if we have further shutdowns or weather events, that could potentially stress the number as well.
And just as a supplementary, flood risks, are they the contractor's liability or risk, or is it ours?
So it's a combination of both. So with the culvert closure process, a lot of that flood risk is with us. Some of the other flood risks before we got to closure were with the contractor. And if there's any delays, then there's a cost to us.
So any more flood risks are all our liability? Is that what you're indicating?
Not all our liability, no, but some of it is.
Right. So at the moment, just to confirm, we still don't have a contingency, and we have acknowledged that we're under pressure, and we haven't done any forecasting what we think might be the potential cost overruns for some of these engineering, electrical, and other costs.
Yeah, correct. So we are installing right now, and we're basically price takers. So we can forecast what we thought the costs were early in the year, and we're battling to keep those costs, because every day the prices seem to go up.
And we've got no reasonable idea of what it could go up to.
Yeah, we haven't started the proper mechanical installation yet.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Councillor Greening. Councillor Shelgrass.
Yeah, just one more thing. What is it an annual cost to run a dam moving forward? Does anyone know what that is, roughly?
So there is a budget. Yes, it is approximately.
I'm sorry, I can't recall. I have to go. I believe it's in the annual report.
$3 million a year. I don't want to hazard a guess.
I can't recall, but we can take it on notice and get that. But we have budgeted the operational cost.
But several $1 million a year. The exact figure can be provided in due course.
But just to put that into perspective, I think 1.1 to $1.2 million of that is just insurance and rates.
Yeah, insurance and rates are two of the biggest costs.
Okay.
All right. Anything further? Sorry, Councillor Hill.
Thank you. It's good to be at this side of things, isn't it? Really, I know there's still some, things to be concerned about, but when I think about some of the meetings we had a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it was pretty stressful, really, all round. In terms of the dispute escalation, that risk only relates to the cost that could be. Are there other risks in terms of that escalation, other than what a final wrap-up might be around, how that settles? Does that generate other risks that there's been an escalation?
So Councillor, the arbitration risk, the dispute risk is really around the outcome.
Yeah.
And we can't say much more about it because clearly it's commercially sensitive.
Yeah. and the relationship is workable, sufficiently workable to continue on in a way that's as efficient as you'd hope.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, dispute proceedings hanging over you is going to have, some impact on working together. But I think the site teams in particular have sort of managed to keep away from that.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm referring to is, and that the budget continues to be stressed. I was going to ask about this. Some of those came out more through responses to Councillor Greening. So where the shutdowns would do it, these mechanical costs, those are sort of, are there any other aspects to the budget being stressed that we haven't sort of articulated clearly here?
So yeah, the main risks that would stress the budget are big weather events.
Yeah.
Particularly over the next 3 or 4 months as we close the reservoir up. Any more COVID absenteeism, 7,000 hours hurt us. If we had another loss of workforce, that would slow things down and be a cost. And then the mechanical cost as we go into installation next year, as we said before. And then fourthly, the dispute outcome.
And the mechanical costs will just be known as they go along, as that's getting progress, that aspect of works. Like I'm just thinking about at what point will we know, the dispute aside, at what point will we know about these other stressing aspects in terms of the budget? What's the point at which we might be told this is how this is panning out?
Yeah, so the mechanical cost is, as I said, sort of a net cost reimbursement sort of basis. So we're up for actual costs as we install the work. So there'll be uncertainty on that work until we finish in the middle of next year.
So it will be middle of next year that we might hear that actually this is what that's rocked out to be.
Yeah,
There must be a signal before that about actually we're there so far and it's this or.
Correct. Yep. So
just a short circuit of this conversation so we get an answer. The next update we expect from you is February.
Correct.
And at that point, you will know more than you know now about the cost of the mechanical and engineering. You won't know the complete cost of it, given the nature of the cost and the build and the contract. However, we will know more in February, and you'll also have a better idea of what the balance of that cost looks like at that point. And at that point, I presume you will tell us.
Correct.
Okay. So we'll know more in February, but we won't know a final. We won't know if
it's rolling on at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. And if there's anything that alarmingly comes up in between, based on the no surprises approach that we have, then we would expect to be informed before then.
No surprises.
Well, I'd prefer not to get that phone call somewhere between now and February, but experience tells me it's not out of the question. Anything further? If not, look, I'd just like to reiterate from our point of view as a shareholder, our appreciation for both the board and the management for the work over the last 12 months. It's obviously incredibly challenging. It certainly doesn't make it easier when you're in a challenging relationship with a contractor, and that a lot of that just falls on individuals on both sides of that discussion, and it makes it difficult to to progress what's an already challenging project. I think, to be fair to everyone involved, on site, a lot of people have put in a huge amount of work despite those challenges, and the fact that we are where we are in terms of time frame, and that we're getting the strong indications that rather than the time has been pulled back significantly from the last update, in terms of we were expecting to lose another summer last time we were updated on. So I think that indicates that the relationship and the commitment from both the contractor and Waimea Water Limited to complete the project and claw that time back is an indication of the improvement in that relationship between the two. So I guess from our perspective, that is the crucial thing now, is to meet that deadline, close in February, whether notwithstanding complete commissioning over the balance of the year, and have water available for use in the season following. So thanks to everyone who's been involved, management, board, governance, and to the contractors. And we look forward to the update in February. Thank you. We've got right. So the last two items we have on the agenda are the receipt of the annual and quarterly reports that were referred to and were contained in the last slide. I'll hand over to Mike.
Through Mr. Mayor, I'll take the reports as read. These reports are already in the public domain and have been reported in the local newspaper. There are no particular matters in the annual report that I need to bring to your attention. This is largely a routine decision to acknowledge receipt of the reports in accordance with the provisions in the Local Government Act.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Mailing has moved, has seconded. Councillor Dakey, are there any questions from anything contained? Councillor Greening.
I'm just trying to traverse through the document as I speak, but I thought I saw a price trajectory of 195 ending in December, yet today we've been advised it's September, not December.
That will be on page 16, figure 17 of the report. Yes, that is in December 2023 is their progress by cost and schedule. Since this report was produced, I understand the schedule has been brought back following conversations with the contractor.
Thank you. Anything further?
So will that diagram be updated, or is that not gone live?
Through Mr. Mann, no, that is a part of the annual report. If that diagram is updated, it will be coming through in one of your quarterly reports.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. If there's nothing further, well, do you want to comment on the quarterly report as well, Mike? I just thought you wrapped it all up in one conversation.
Yes, sorry, I was assuming councillors would take them as two separate reports. There's no matters I need to draw to your attention in the quarterly report. It was delivered to council on time. The quarterly report has also been presented to the other shareholder. They had no matters to raise in relation to this. So once again, routine decision simply to acknowledge receipt of the report, and the matters in the report have been presented to you by the company in the presentation today.
Thank you. So we'll take them two separately. So the adoption of the annual receipt of the annual report was moved Councillor Mailing, seconded Councillor Dakey. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Someone like to move the receipt of the quarterly report? I'll move. Councillor Hill, seconded Councillor Bryant. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. And I think that draws us to the conclusion of the meeting. Are you sure?
Yes.
I don't want to close it and then find I have to reopen it again.
Meeting next Thursday.
So we do have another meeting next Thursday. All right. Thank you very much. I will declare the meeting closed and ask Councillor Hill to do the closing karakia.
Sure.
Thank you. Kia ora, Councillor Hill. That is the conclusion of the meeting. There is the potential for a brief council meeting Thursday next week to adopt